this meeting of the Honorable Senate of Jamaica for Friday, December 10, 2021 is called to order with statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following ministry papers, number 94, 95, 96, and 97, respectively, entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues, dated September 6 and 13, 2021, September 20, 2021, September 27, 2021, and September. And ministry paper number 97, entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Agro-Investment Corporation for the year ended March 31, 2028. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Agro-Investment Corporation for the year ended March 31, 2018. Ministry paper number 98, entitled Statistical Institute of Jamaica Annual Reports for the financial years ended March 31, 2015 and March 31, 2016. The MOCA, the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency, investigation and protection procedures regulations 2021 and its resolution. The public bodies management and accountability, nomination, selection, and appointment to boards regulations 2021 and its resolution. Ministry paper number 99 of 2021, entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Rural Agricultural Development Authority for the year ended March 31, 2019. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Rural Agricultural Development Authority for the year ended March 31, 2019. Annual Report for Devon House Development Limited for the period April 2021 to March 2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. I'm sorry, yes, I did. Reports from committees. Notice of motions given orally.
Mr. President,
Sorry, thank you, Minister. Just a minute, Senator Morris. Go ahead. Go ahead, Minister.
I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate I will move, be it resolved that in accordance with Section 60, subsection 1 of the Integrity Commission Act 2017, this Honorable Senate appoint a select committee comprising the following members: Senator Ransford Braham QC, Senator Shireen Golding Campbell, Senator Charles Sinclair, Senator Peter Bunting, and Senator Donna Scott Mottley, to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to conduct a review of the Act. And be it resolved that in accordance with Section 27 of the Protected Disclosures Act 2011, this Honourable Senate appoint a select committee comprising the following members: Senator the Honourable Leslie Campbell, Senator Cavan Gale, Senator Shireen Golding Campbell, Senator Donna Scott Mottley, Senator Lambert Brown, to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to conduct a review of the Act. And Mr. President, I beg to give further notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the motions.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Morris.
At the next sitting of the Senate, I'll move the following motion. Whereas the National Honors and Awards Act gives the authority to the Governor General to confer the status of National Hero on a citizen of Jamaica subject to recommendations from the Prime Minister. And whereas Section 5 of the Act gives authority to the establishment of an advisory committee for the Order of National Hero, and whereas Section 5.3 of the Act stipulates that the advisory committee can conduct investigation as to individuals that it thinks fit to be conferred the honor of national hero, whether living or dead, and whereas the findings of this investigation should be conveyed to the Prime Minister for action, and whereas the Act requires that an individual with such conferment of national hero should be a citizen of Jamaica who has given most distinguished service to the country, and whereas the Honorable Robert Nestor Bob Marley, the Honorable James Chambers Jimmy Cliff, the Honorable Luz Bennett Coverley, Miss Lou, and the Honorable Usain St. Leo Bolt have all given most distinguished service to Jamaica in the areas of music, sports, and culture. And whereas these citizens have presented Jamaica in a frabjous light across the world and contributed to the dominance of the country in reggae music, sports, and culture since the country gained political independence in 1962, and whereas their prodigious efforts through their careers have contributed to the global recognition of Jamaica, be it resolved that this Honorable Senate calls upon the government to put in place the necessary mechanisms and procedures for these iconic Jamaicans to be declared national heroes and heroines respectively, and be it resolved that these conferments be completed in time for the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence on August 6, 2022. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Morris. Senator Samuda, I'm sorry, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I beg to give notice also that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Nominations, Selections, and Appointment to Boards Regulations 2021 Resolution, whereas by virtue of Section 24, subsection 1, paragraph C of the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, the Minister may make regulations generally for giving effect to the provisions and purposes of the Act, and may in particular specify criteria for the appointment of boards of public bodies. And whereas on the 30th day of November 2021, the Minister made the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Nomination, Selection, and Appointment to Boards Regulations 2021, and whereas it is provided by Section 24(2) of the Act that regulations made under Section 24(1) of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable Senate as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Nomination, Selection, and Appointment to Boards Regulations 2021 Resolution, and 2. The Public Bodies Management and Accountability Nomination, Selection, and Appointment to Boards Regulations 2021, which were laid on the table of the Senate on the 10th day of November 2021, are hereby affirmed.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith. Minister Samuda.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency Act, the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Investigation and Prosecution Procedures Regulations 2021 Resolution. Whereas by virtue of Section 42 of the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, the Minister may make regulations subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 30th day of November 2021, the Minister made the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Investigation, Prosecution Procedures Regulations 2021, and whereas it is desirable that the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Investigation and Prosecution Procedures Regulations 2021 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable Senate as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Investigation and Prosecution Procedures Regulations 2021 resolution. And 2, the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Investigation and Prosecution Procedures Regulations 2021 are hereby affirmed.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. Questions and answers to questions?
Mr. President, questions were asked by Senator Morris of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information through me, and these questions were due on the 26th of November 2021. Mr. President, they were not quite ready on that date, and we did not sit on the following week. I have the questions here, and I have asked the Parliament to send a soft copy to Senator Morris, but given that we had a late start, and I must claim, Mr. President, that I have a presentation to make in commemoration of International Human Rights Day, I wanted to suggest to Senator Morris that if he would want to take the time to review the questions and then perhaps send the answers to the questions, and then perhaps if he had any follow-up questions, we could take them at the next sitting of the Senate. If he would find this agreeable, then that might be an efficient way to address that matter today. The questions have an appendix. They might take a little time to read and go through, and I think that might be an appropriate way to address this morning, but of course with Senator Morris's agreement.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Morris, you're...
I'll review and act accordingly.
Thank you very much. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister, just before you start, sorry, Senator, just before you start public business, I indicate that I should have, at the start of the Senate, bring to the attention of this body the passing of former Member of Parliament, former Minister of Housing, former Member of Parliament for Southwest Clarendon from, I think it was 89 to 97, and former Member of Parliament for Central Clarendon, 1976 to 1980, O.D. Ramtali, who has been widely regarded as an excellent public servant, an excellent Member of Parliament, and an outstanding Minister of Housing. The tongue of good report has been heard on his behalf in the other place, and indeed he, as indicated, was a Member of Parliament for the People's National Party, and that party has acknowledged his service to the party and the country elsewhere. But it is incumbent upon me to bring to the attention of the Senate his passage, and also ask the clerk to pen a note of condolence to his family. I think that Senator Scott Mottley might want to say something very briefly, as I know that she was particularly close to him, coming from the parish that he represented.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak and to say a few words about former Minister O.D. Ramtali. I think it is an open and well-known fact that he mentored me in my political career when he decided not to contest the election in Central Clarendon, he having been the Member of Parliament in 1976, I had the dubious fortune of being selected to contest the election in 1989. So I got to know Mr. Ramtali in a way that almost an adopted daughter would, because I think he felt very responsible about the fact that I was going to run in this constituency, which was considered a garrison at the time, and which was a hotbed of political violence. So he was responsible for a lot of how my character unfurled, and I got to know myself better under the circumstances of that, being a candidate in that election. So when Mr. Ramtali was appointed Minister of Construction and Housing, he approached that task in much the same way he did everything, with energy, with determination, and with focus. And so he presided over the construction of what is still considered one of the largest housing developments, that is the Portmore development. He did not confine himself to just ensuring that everybody in the country could own a home, directing the less fortunate and middle-class persons to that Portmore housing development, but he also did places like Dillsbury, which was targeted particularly for civil servants. And I do know members of the judiciary who were able to take advantage of that, the availability and the openness of that situation to them. What I remember him for the most, which is a curious thing, because people have been really very commendable about his performance, but the National Housing Trust, before he took it over, was considered to be an agency with a terrible reputation. As an attorney, when you saw the National Housing Trust lending somebody money, you would literally sigh, because you knew it was going to take you about a year for this to come through. And because whenever anything was pointed out to him, he developed this focus about addressing the issue. Under his stewardship, the National Housing Trust rehabilitated itself and became known as an agency that you could rely on for systems to be put in place and expertise to be available so that you could actually get your commitments and your whole transaction through in good time. Mr. President, time does not permit me to tell you about this man. But if you'll permit me one personal story. When I was the chair of the Road Traffic Tribunal, the first one which was established, I took my task so seriously that my son would clap me if I overtook a vehicle, because I never wanted it to be said that I broke the law in any shape or form. So one day, I am driving, and in my rearview mirror, I saw this Prado hurtling, literally hurtling down the road. And I said, if it's the last thing I do, I am going to find out who is driving this vehicle, because if he ever comes before me, he will never get a license again. And then I saw that it was O.D. Ramtali. So it was, you know, when you have to rethink your position on some things. But he never had to come before me, thank God. He gave his life to the people of this country. He gave his life to the service of the less fortunate. The work he did in Clarendon was always about the upliftment of the less fortunate, behind cooperatives, behind the farmers, always advocating. And even when he got ill, he never stopped. He never stopped. It was just amazing. He would go to his wheelchair to a funeral, and in his wheelchair to all the conferences of the People's National Party. He lived to 96, and if he had not fallen ill, he would probably be sitting here somewhere. because he was so interested in politics and so devoted. To the people of Jamaica, he was just an exceptional human being. And it's not, the nice thing about it is these are the things you had to say about him when he was alive. In other words, you're not just making it up to honor him. There were facts of the type of person he was. And a humble person who understood what a life of service meant. And I thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me in this space to say that I loved him truly, and he's deserving of the highest commendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Scott Mottley. Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to, on behalf of this side of the House, extend our condolences to Mr. Odi Ramtali's family and at his passing. I chose to contribute because he was my neighbor. We're Clarendonians together, Senator Mottley. And he was my literal physical neighbor. My father's farm was here and his is right next door. And I grew up, didn't know him that well personally, but I knew the name, and you knew of the man, and you knew of his presence in the community. And what I remember was that he was there as a stalwart in the community. He had a sugarcane farm on those acres beside us. I think it is 13 acres. And he was one of the sugarcane farmers that everybody knew in the community. And whenever you see Odie start his process, everybody start to do what they need to do to get the crops in. And it so came, and it's interesting, and in terms of his background with land and housing, that farm became available for sale. And it being adjacent to my father's place, I showed some interest in it. And my father said to me, Sophie, because he calls me Sophie, Sophie, I don't know if you're going to get to know, because a lot of people, because it's one of those that has irrigation, water all around, and it's very, very sought after. And I got a call one day, and it was Mr. Ramtali. And he says, I hear you're interested. And I say, yes. And he said, all right, you're going to get it. Because I know you know the value of it. And in that, I appreciated that even though I did not know him well, he was still looking out for my best interest. And I know that he was a community man, and I thank him for his service. And I just want to say thank you again for giving me that opportunity and for the opportunity that he has bestowed on other Jamaicans. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Longmore. And like everything else you live and learn, I never knew that Senator Longmore was a member of the Cane Farmers Association. But there you go. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, we live and learn every day.
I wanted to raise a matter relating to public business that has implications for how we proceed, if you would permit me, Mr. President. It has to do with a matter that came up in the debate on the National Identification and Registration Act.
Senator Morris, I'm just going to ask Senator Sinclair to take the chair because I have an important matter to deal with.
Okay.
So if you just give me 1 minute so we just transit. Senator Morris, the other thing too I'm going to ask, if you'd allow Minister Johnson Smith to go ahead before you, as she needs to be out of here as well.
The only thing, Minister, both of us were having a discussion about the matter, and I just wanted her to be appraised of it, so that she can deal with it elsewhere.
Okay, so in 2 minutes you can address Senator Sinclair.
Okay. Yes. So in the debate, I had raised a matter about the inclusion of persons with disabilities as a part of the enrollment mechanism for the NIDS, and the technical team had, I would say, incorrectly advised the minister as to the situation. And I have subsequently learned, Minister, that they have been trying to get the JCPD to agree to get the international sign for disability on the identification card for persons with disabilities. But that cannot be done, Minister, without them knowing exactly who are the persons with disabilities. And the only way they would have to know that, get to know that, is if the issue of disability and nature of disability is on the card or on the database. And the only way you can do that in the database is if you get an amendment to include disability and type of disability. And so I'm just raising it because I'm aware of the discussion that is taking place, and you and I had previous exchanges over the matter.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Morris. Yes, I had intended to, in fact, follow up with you, as I hadn't thought that it needed to be a discussion that was held across the aisle, because it is, in fact, quite a collaborative one, but an administrative matter. So, as indicated, I had assured you that I would make inquiries into the matter, which I did. And what I understand is that after the presentation had been made to the Joint Select Committee, further discussions had been held whereby it had been made clear that the community was not minded to have disabilities, the types of disabilities on the card, as had been put forward, and that a solution needed to be agreed. And I understand that those discussions continue along with the specific proposal that the international symbol for persons with disabilities be placed on the card as a method of identification for persons with disabilities, but without perhaps what was felt by members of the community to be, and through the JCPD, to be a source of perhaps too much disclosure, too much information. So that discussion continues. I had actually thought that it had been agreed, but recognizing that there would be a process. It wouldn't need to be amended, the Act itself would not need to be amended because the matter would be dealt with in regulations or dealt with administratively. But that what you do have, Senator, and what the Senate certainly has, is the assurance that we will ensure that an appropriate and mutually agreeable solution is found. So if it is that there is an adjustment that, or rather, if it needs to be expressly included in the regulations, which I believe it will be, then the relevant process would be followed to have that done. If it is that this is the agreed solution. If there is another proposal that is being made, then I'm sure that one will be considered as well. But I do know that the NIDS technical team has been in discussions with the JCPD throughout the process to clarify that matter as it had been raised by you, and as I indicated, I gave my assurance that it would be looked at, and it is being. So we can, we can discuss further if you have other concerns, but it would be pleased to have the conversation by phone or otherwise, just to, or even in written correspondence if you prefer that method, so that it can be dealt with efficiently.
I'll email you.
Email, absolutely. And Mr. President, with that, just to indicate, again, my apologies that I will have to depart today because it is International Human Rights Day, and as my ministry chairs the Interministerial Committee on Human Rights, there are several events today, and we were unfortunately unable to move everything to accommodate these commitments. I therefore just wanted to take the notice of motion that I gave earlier in respect of the establishment of 2 joint select committees. If, Mr. President, I could move for the suspension of standing orders to take those 2 motions, it would be much appreciated.
You have heard the question. All in favor? Any against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, might the motions, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved?
The question is that the motions stated by the Minister be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, if I might ask for recommittal of the item statement by ministers.
Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Recommittal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just pause a second while the copies are distributed. Mr. President, I rise to update the Honourable Senate on two matters of national importance in respect of the Department of Correctional Services, DCS, that were highlighted in two special investigation reports by the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM. Mr. President, you may recall the tragic death of 81-year-old Noel Chambers, a former inmate at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Centre, resulting from the incapacity of DCS to adequately provide for the healthcare needs of bedridden and infirmed inmates. Mr. Chambers died while in the care of DCS after being incarcerated for a period of 40 years without trial, having been deemed unfit to plead. The report shed light on notable systemic weaknesses such as human resource constraints and infrastructural deficiencies within the DCS, particularly in relation to care of such vulnerable groups. The government, in response, commissioned a comprehensive audit into the matter and committed to ensuring the implementation of a plan of action to address the identified deficiencies in an effort to improve the duty of care offered to these inmates. Mr. President, the second matter highlighted by INDECOM surrounded the treatment and care of the wards at the Rio Cobre Juvenile Correctional Centre, RCJCC. While the report highlighted several best practices in relation to the administration and treatment of the wards, these were overshadowed by allegations of breaches against the rights of the wards and contravention of key provisions of international conventions. Mr. President, having reviewed the findings of the report, I immediately commissioned the establishment of the Correctional Services Technical Working Group, comprising key stakeholders from select ministries, departments, and agencies, donor agencies, and other interested parties. The CSTWG was tasked to conduct a comprehensive review of the operations of all juvenile correctional centres, with special focus on the duty of care to the wards, particularly in relation to the appropriateness of disciplinary measures and the timely access to requisite educational and psychosocial interventions. The main deliverable being the provision of a report and action plan, inclusive of a roadmap, recommended strategies, policy changes, and infrastructural improvements to ensure the appropriateness of care, and treatment of the wards in the juvenile correctional centres. Mr. President, I'm pleased to inform the Senate, the Honourable Senate, and by extension the nation, that we have made great strides in fulfilling the government's commitment to improving the duty of care observed in the provision of treatment to bedridden and infirmed inmates, as well as the wards within our care. And I think it's important to update, Mr. President, that on October 29th, we opened a 25-bed medical centre and infirmary located at the Tamarind Farm Adult Correctional Centre in St. Catherine, the first of its kind. I am also happy to announce that 15 inmates who were transferred from the St. Catherine and Tower Street Correctional Centres are now receiving specialised care at the newly opened facility. The availability of adequate human resources remains a major constraint for the DCS. There are not enough medical practitioners to meet the demands of the current population of inmates with special health care needs. I am happy to report, however, that since undertaking this review, the DCS has expanded its cadre of medical doctors to include 5 medical doctors and 6 health aides. The latter have been assigned to the infirmary. Additionally, approval has been granted, Mr. President, by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for the hiring of 12 psychiatrists and 10 psychologists to join the 2 psychologists currently on staff, a major increase in support. Mr. Speaker, these additions will bring significant improvements in meeting the needs of these vulnerable groups. Additionally, Mr. President, the MNS is at an advanced stage in procurement of a specialist psychiatrist who will be tasked with ensuring the timely assessment of all unfit to plead inmates, with a view to have their matters relisted before the courts for a final determination. Important to note, and if the question is asked, DCS, under its legal obligations, are up to date with all reports as the requirements from the court system or the law requires. Mr. President, onto the CSTWG. I would like to use this opportunity to recognize the members of the CSTWG who responded to the charge and through diligence and commitment undertook the review of the operations of the juvenile correctional centers. The committee examined areas in relation to the infrastructure, psychosocial and behavioral management, and legislation. Mr. President, allow me to highlight the membership of the working group, though I noticed they deliberately left themselves out of the report. Many of them are selfless individuals which tend to shy away from national attention, but I think it's important for my colleagues on both sides of the island, indeed the nation, to appreciate their service. As a part of this working group was included Attorney at Law, Ms. Jacqueline Samuels-Brown, from the Center for Investigation, from SISOCA, Mrs. Samantha Smith-Daly, from the Combined Disability Association, Mr. Arthur Anthony Taylor, from the CPFSA, Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, from the Ministry of Justice, Ms. Janet Howe, from the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, Dr. Michelle Henry, from the Ministry of Health, Dr. Judith Leiber, from the Office of the Children's Advocate, Mrs. Keisha Rodriguez Mills, from the Office of the Public Defender, Mr. Victor Hemmings, from the Senior Uniformed Association to represent the staff, Mr. Reynard Smalling, from the Jamaica Federation of Corrections, Mr. Jermaine Shaw, from UNICEF, Mrs. Yisetki Winden, Ms. Isabel Carringer, Mrs. Charlene Angela Kaur, from DCS itself, Ms. Nadia Brown, from the Ministry of National Security, our chair, and I wish to acknowledge her especially, our Chief Technical Director, Shauna Trowers, Ms. Chanel Stevens, Ms. Shade Brown, indeed Ms. Ella Gate, Ms. Vashti Kerbin Graham, Mr. Alexander Carswell, and Ms. Kerry Lee Chin. Now, I wish to ask for the acknowledgement and thanks for the work that they would have put in. I'm never a fan of big working groups and committees, but because of how the working group was organized and the sub-working groups that would have been done, that would have been put in place, the extra help was useful, and I think members will agree that the membership of this working group is quite an esteemed group and a group of people that have demonstrated over the years their commitment to the care of the nation's children. Mr. President, I wish to put on record my thanks to them. Some of the thematic areas, colleagues, covered in the report include accommodation and infrastructure, admission protocols, classification and separation, medical and mental health services, disciplinary procedures and sanctions, special needs and disabilities, rehabilitation and reintegration programs, human resource and capacity building, safety, security, search and inspection. The community concluded their findings and provided a comprehensive report which was brought before Cabinet on November 22nd. Mr. President, I wish to acknowledge that the report, for those who wish to read it, whether in this chamber or in the public domain, is now published on the MNS and DCS websites respectively, so persons can read at their leisure and look out. And for those who do follow me on Twitter, I would have tweeted a link to the MNS website with the report this morning, so those who wish to read it, I've also asked that the Parliament dispatch a copy of same to make it easy for colleagues to review. Now, two things would have jumped out at me, and I would have exchanged words with Senator Bunting on one of them. I've found evidence of similar, not identical, and triggered for different reasons, of reports from 2004, 2010, 2014, and now this report. Now, one of the things that would have been upsetting to read, I mean, very large documents, so when you do read them, you would hope that you'd see distinct differences. There weren't enough distinct differences to give me comfort that on the brink of almost at 18 years since the first one that I found, there weren't sufficient strides and improvements in the space. So one of the differences, however, that I can speak to with this report and why I made it a point of duty, whether they wanted to or not, was the action plan that came. The action plan that was presented to me as minister is quite significant, and it's laid out with timelines, budgetary implications, what has been done already, and it's done by layer from taking every point of the reports and what needs to be done. And this is, as you would have heard, the working group is important to note because it's such a diverse but interested group in these juveniles. It has given us a roadmap for legislation, for infrastructure, for discussions with our partners, and importantly, a roadmap for discussions with the Ministry of Finance so that they can properly plan and program expenditure over the coming years as we ensure that the next time a report is done, it's on how to move it from strength to strength as opposed to how to correct issues that we've known about for 18 years. Mr. President, as a result of this effort, UNICEF Jamaica, a member of the CSTWG, has committed to a partnership with the MNS for the provision of training to correctional officers in the areas of child rights and justice and supporting development of standard operating procedures. Mr. President, this, we believe, will help to change the culture, will help to change the training, and will ultimately change the outcomes from the juveniles who are in the Correctional Services Working Group. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Minister knows when it comes to treating with one of the vulnerable groups in the society, which include many within the correctional system, the wards of the state, the inmates deemed unfit to plead, that he has an ally in supporting whatever policy or legislation will improve those, the lot of those who I mentioned. And in particular, as he raised the 2014 report, that was commissioned during my time. I think it was in response to the Maria Dean case at Barnett Street. And we had a similar committee, very distinguished persons, the Indicom Commission at the time, Sir Williams, the Children's Advocate, and so on. Very distinguished group, and they did an excellent report. And I understand completely your frustration that 7 years later, we still have so much work left to do. But I thank you for the update. You had made a commitment to keep the Senate informed, or, well, the country through the Senate informed. And I welcome some of the initiatives that have now been actioned, in particular the one at the facility at the Tamarind Farm Adult Correctional Center for the bedridden and infirmed inmates. I just have 3 or 4 questions, which I would ask the Minister to respond to. First is specifically to the elderly, the bedridden, and the infirmed inmates. During this time of COVID, many countries and states have found ways to do an early release of these inmates which are not deemed to be a threat to society and who are particularly vulnerable to COVID, living in these congregant facilities, and also because of their advanced age and comorbidities. Have we explored ways using whatever mechanisms are allowed within our jurisdiction to be a part of this. I know it can be difficult in some cases because there are no families to receive them. But wherever there are, have we looked at any mechanism that could accelerate this on compassionate grounds and to reduce their risk to things like COVID? That's the first question. The second is, when you, I believe in one of the earlier statements you made, you had given us some numbers in terms of the inmates who were deemed unfit to plea and on the serving at, I forget the exact term, the lawyers can help me, serving at the Governor General's pleasure. That category. Can you speak to any progress we've made in reviewing those cases? I remember during my time, the committee had been set up by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security because it involved health, it involved a number of other ministries, but primarily health, to help bring these cases before the courts to see if they could be disposed of. In many, many cases, the sentences or the time they had spent in the correctional system was way longer than if they had been found guilty of the original offense that caused them to be arrested. And finally, now switching over to the juveniles and although you spoke specifically to the Rio Cobre situation, but just generally speaking, we got a report of 3 wards of the state escaping from Metcalfe Street earlier this week. I was wondering if you could, while not strictly within your statement, but because you're speaking to juveniles, if you could give us any update on that, Minister. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for those questions, Senator Bunting. The timing of the Noel Chambers report and COVID was not that dissimilar. I won't say that the motivation was purely COVID. I think me reading that initial report and even having the opportunity to tour our adult correctional facilities, it prompted in me, I think, the urgent need to allocate the resources and the time to ensure that we looked at the persons who should not be in our custody and move on. And I do acknowledge the committee that you would have convened at the time. I know you'd made some progress with a few dozen cases, but as you would recall, one of the major issues, and you did hit on it, is the location of families. One of the things that we've done, we've asked our team in probation and aftercare to give significant assistance in terms of trying to locate families. And even with that, we've had very, very limited success, quite frankly. Many of the persons, as you would mention, have been there longer than they would have been had they gone to trial in that space. And unfortunately, many of their families have moved on. It's one of the reasons why it was clear to us that we had to put in place this prison infirmary, first of its kind, as opposed to just a wing that's called such. So, it has the appropriate ramps, the appropriate bars, the appropriate bathroom facilities for this sort of space. And we're clear that we could see ourselves in the next 2 years also needing to increase capacity, depending on how things go. But one of the things that we've done, we did get some support from MOH again, and we also procured some external services to ensure that all of the reports needed by the court and the GG to make determinations for consideration of release are indeed up to date. One of the criticisms in the INDICOM report was the gaps, that you just didn't have the appropriate reports in place. And I acknowledge, I believe it was 2015, maybe I'm wrong, late 2014, early 2015, that you'd have started that process. So we've continued it and we're up to date, but there have been very few early releases, and members should remember that DCS is a creature of instruction. We've made representation where we think appropriate, and we've ensured that the reporting required by law is up to date. I don't recall, and I was looking through my papers, the exact numbers of unfit to plead. There have been a few releases, not many, and I'd be content to share the information with you after. And we are sticking to the process. But as it relates to COVID, you know, it was never going to be easy to manage COVID in correctional facilities, whether juvenile, adult, and certainly not in the case of aged. It's why we've taken particular steps and been in constant consultation with the Ministry of Health. One of the things that we've had to do, which is the hardest, I think has had a really tough impact on the psychosocial health of our inmates, is curtail visitation. We know that COVID won't magically appear in any of the facilities. It has to be brought in by a vector, whether human or on a surface. It's why we've had to increase significantly our spend on sanitization and cleaning of surfaces and purchase of things like bleach, which has been challenging. With the elderly, it has been particularly challenging. We've had to pair the persons who give service to them, whether civilian staff or indeed volunteers within the facility, almost into a bubble for themselves to reduce exposure into this space. But it has been challenging, but we've not pursued a release program specifically related to COVID. What we have pursued is a program to release those who should not be within our care. I think that deals with the first two questions. As it relates to the 3 juveniles who would have absconded bail, absconded custody, rather, as is the appropriate term. There are 3 young men between 12 and 17, all on charge, very serious charges, one including murder. They would have managed to get out in very interesting circumstances, and they have to be very strong, quite frankly, to break free from the infrastructure that would have or was supposed to keep them in custody. Investigations are underway under the circumstances, and I wouldn't want to comment much on the circumstances of their exit, but I would like to note that one person is already back in custody. I expect a second to be back in custody in very short order based on outreach of family, and the third should also be back in custody in not as short a period, but in short order as the JCF continues to assist us in the investigations. But it does also show us that as much attention as I know I've had to focus on the issue of duty of care, that DCS can never take its eye off of custodial management, because in many cases, not just in the juvenile facilities, you do have persons with deep criminal intent that there's a very good reason why they're separated from society. Thank you.
Just a follow-up on that. I remember when I was minister again, we attempted to discontinue holding any juveniles at Horizon. But just because there were a few cases who were potentially so violent and risky to society, and because Metcalfe Street had a lower level of security against escape, in such a case, especially when you're talking maybe a 17-year-old who may be a fairly strong person already charged with murder, sometimes even we had cases where they had multiple murders. Would you consider, does the system allow for them to be kept at more secure facilities than Metcalfe Street?
So, the system allows for it, but it's a practice that we've not pursued because of the inherent issues with holding juveniles with adults. There has been some strengthening of the security arrangements at a section of Metcalfe. And though there is a board of inquiry underway which will deal with staff issues, though the inspectorate from the ministry is looking into it, and though the security forces are indeed investigating to ensure there's no issue of negligence or corruption which would have led to it. One of the unfortunate things, it is the very management of COVID situation that we believe led to or created the environment for this to be to be possible. When persons are exposed, when persons go to court, they have to be segregated from the rest of the populations, whether in juvenile or adult facilities. And the areas that we've had to use for same are not originally designed as cells. So there has been retrofitting, and even in this case, this has prompted a security review to make sure that all of the areas that we're using for separation of those who come in contact with COVID or do come in contact with the courts or otherwise are indeed secure enough right across the system. Thank you.
Mr. President, I just have one question I want to ask the Minister. After I thank him for taking this report to the Senate and doing so on International Human Rights Day, very significant that you have done so to me. Minister, I note that you have said that you have got approval from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for the hiring of 12 psychiatrists and 10 psychologists to join the 2 currently on staff. Now, from the narratives, what we understand is that sometimes the remuneration is so low that you cannot actually attract these experts who are in high demand. Are you in a position to give us an assurance that that has been addressed sufficiently so that we can be guaranteed that the positions will in fact be filled?
So that issue you've touched on is one that I think myself and Senator Brown have had to exchange words on in related, because he does represent some of the members of the correctional services. I won't say that without a shadow of a doubt we'll attract everyone that we need. I will say I believe that the allocations are sufficient to certainly attract the sessional persons, and I believe because a special allocation has been made for the forensic psychiatrist position, that we will attract, I would hope, majority of the positions. I think it is sufficient to do that. But can I say without a shadow of a doubt, it's not the easiest working environment. So one would think that if you're working in a harder working environment, many persons would want more than a better environment. It's not necessarily more than a better environment, but it is comparable with that in the public health system. Whereas in the past, it has not always been comparable with that in the public health system. It was at a lower grade. So the hope is that since it is comparable in that space, that we will be able to attract the staff that we need. But we have made the provisions, which unfortunately is what I can do at this stage.
Go ahead, Senator Brown.
You and I are in communication number matters. And like Senator Bunting, I too would love to add information. The number of people unfit to plea, but sadly that's not an information that is available to us, as Senator Scott Mottley said, on International Human Rights Day. We wish it was available. But on page 2 of your report, you spoke about the availability of adequate human resources remain a major constraint to the Department of Correctional Services. I assume this, in fact, involves correctional officer shortage. And are you aware of steps being taken to resolve overtime, otherwise called day in lieu, work by these correctional officers, which would help to ease the shortage if they are paid? And that this is something going back several years that could create a problem in the department, worsening the situation that you indicate. And finally, I don't know if you could update us on whether or not there's a decision taken not to stop the COVID transport that is provided for the correctional officers. And I raise this against the background, Minister, of sad news coming out of Trinidad and Tobago, where correctional officers have been targeted by people inside the institution for death, and actually 2 or 3 have died in recent time. And so you may be aware that the officers are concerned that to cut off this transport and to expose them to public transport is not something that they appreciate at this time. And knowing how proactive you are, I'm depending on you to assist the officers. May it please you, Mr. President.
I suspect that was the prelim to our upcoming meetings. But no, there's no doubt that the staffing of correctional service has been inadequate in all categories for a long period of time, which has led to many of the issues that have come out in reports that are public and some that are not. I'm aware of that issue. I won't say too much about it. It is something that I believe is a legacy issue, but it needs to be solved. Let's have that conversation in private and report to the nation what the results are as it relates to the day in lieu payment. The other thing, though, that I can update the country on, Mr. President, is that we have increased our rate of recruitment and training to try and bring the numbers up to indeed what the establishment is, which will also not just take pressure off, but will ensure that we have the appropriate resources in place for the custodial management that we need to have in place. As it relates to the transportation issue, again, that's one that I'd ask that we are allowed to discuss in private and report to the nation when resolution is had. All right? Thank you, Mr. President.
That's it. Thank you very much, Minister. I'm sorry. We had got a recommittal to statements. Now we are at public business, back at public business. We are. That's where we were, Senator Brown, before you came in, and got a recommittal.
So we recommit.
So we are at public business.
We're asking for the recommittal of bills brought from the House of Representatives. And that's after the statement.
All right. Recommittal of bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives. Those in favor? We get seeking a recommittal. Those against? The ayes have it.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honourable Senate. I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on Tuesday, November 30, 2021, the House of Representatives agreed to the amendments made by the Senate to a bill entitled An Act to Amend the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Act to regulate domestic trust service providers and domestic corporate service providers, to change the name of the Act to reflect the foregoing, to incorporate provisions which serve to deter the use of business operations under the Act for the purpose of money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to require service providers to observe customer due diligence requirements, maintain accurate records and systems of international controls, and to provide for connected matters. Signed, Marisa Dalrymple, Philibert, CDMP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
So we are at public business. Minister.
Mr. President, I'm asking that Senator Campbell be allowed to present the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Act now.
Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in 2017, Parliament passed the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Act, which seeks to modernize the agricultural sector to meet the nation's growing demands of food security and increased productivity. The modernization process involves a streamlining of certain functions performed by the Agricultural Credit Board with a view to promoting efficiency. This streamlining process involves the dissolution of the Agricultural Credit Board and the absorption of the board's monitoring and inspection functions by the Registrar of Cooperative Societies. In order for the Department of Cooperative Societies to effectively perform these functions, the 31 positions of the Agricultural Credit Board were transferred to the Department of Cooperative Societies. The Act, therefore, inter alia, provides for the repeal of the Agricultural Credit Board Act, the transfer of the relevant monitoring and inspection functions of the Agricultural Credit Board in relation to the management of agricultural loan societies to the Registrar of Cooperative Societies, the establishment of the Agricultural Appeal Tribunal, the registration and regulation of the agricultural loan societies, and the certification of approved organizations by or under the Registrar of Cooperative Societies and matters related thereto, and several mechanisms to combat money laundering. The agricultural loan societies and approved organizations regulated by the Act are established to offer loans and give support to its members for agricultural activities, and thereby promoting the growth of the agricultural sector in Jamaica. In order to give effect to the purposes of the Act, there is need for the promulgation of regulations to further strengthen the legislative framework. Therefore, the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulation 2021 before us is being promulgated in keeping with Section 54(1) of the Act, subject to affirmative resolution. These regulations include, among other things, provisions for the following: to promote the requirement for agricultural loan societies to file a copy of their rules along with the application form for registration, to allow the agricultural loan societies and approved organizations to amend their rules subject to the approval of the registrar, to stipulate that all loans are to be classified as approved by the registrar in accordance with sections 37 and 38 of the Act, which identifies various types of loans that can be granted by agricultural loan societies and approved organizations, to provide for the duty of agricultural loan societies and approved organizations to keep written and up-to-date records of books and documents and to submit annual reports and returns to the registrar, to provide requirement for agricultural loan societies and approved organizations to prepare a monthly statement to be submitted to the Committee of Management of the Society or the approved organization and the registrar at its first meeting, to provide for the requirement for every agricultural loan society and approved organization to supply its secretary or any other officer authorized to receive monies with a receipt book approved by the registrar, and further to allow standard accounting procedures, to provide for the power of the registrar to examine the books, securities, records, and all cash in hand of an agricultural loan society or approved organization at the request of the registrar or an officer authorized by the registrar, to require the secretary or an authorized officer of an agricultural loan society or approved organization to lodge all funds of the society or approved organization to a bank approved by the registrar in the name of the society or approved organization, to provide for the power to the registrar that at any time require an agricultural loan society and approved organization to make provision for the safekeeping of cash securities, documents, and other property of the society or approved organization. To provide for the duty of the Agricultural Loan Society and approved organization to immediately notify the registrar of any change in the persons holding office of the chairman, treasurer, secretary, manager, or any other office, including the person authorized to sign checks. To provide for the requirement of every agricultural loan society and approved organization at the end of each year to forward to each member of the society and approved organization and a financial statement. To provide for various prescribed forms and fees, such as the registration and certification fees, and to provide for the penalty for offenses under the regulations. Mr. President, the present regime has somewhere in the region of 28 entities, though essentially those entities which operate in the local communities. The agricultural loan, what do I call them? Those loan PC banks. There are about 28 of those operating locally. And whilst the regulations envisages other players coming into the market, that is essentially what the regulation is seeking to do at the moment. That is to control the operations of those PC banks and to meet any other entities which are contemplating coming into the market. I commend these regulations to this Honourable Senate and sincerely hope that it will be approved. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Fraser-Binns. Thank you, Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And like Minister, I shall be very brief. Mr. President, I want to make a few. I want to make a few comments on this regulation that is before us, the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organization Regulations of 2021. And, Mr. President, I do recall the discussion when the principal legislation was being debated, and the intent and the purpose was in fact, or is in fact, quite commendable. I, however, Mr. President, have some concerns in terms of how organizations, particularly those that have anything to do with the agricultural sector, are managed. Regrettably, we have been hearing of things in the media regarding key agricultural entities, and they, Minister, do not augur well for us as a country, and certainly is at variance with what we're trying to achieve by the passage of these regulations this morning. And it becomes even more important, Mr. President, because the issue of food security is critical to us as a country. And not only because of climate change and the undoubted impact that climate change has been having on our agricultural sector, but also because of the financial implication it has, Senator Webby. And you have spoken in this and other fora about the need for all of us as Jamaicans, and I'm so happy to know that Dr. Longmore, Senator Longmore, is a farmer, because... No, she's actually a crop farmer. Yes, yes. And you guys should compare. You guys should share notes and best practices. But seriously though, Mr. President, Senator Webby has been one of the persons in this place who have said repeatedly that all of us need to play a role in ensuring that we have food security. And it is in that realm, Minister, that I believe that the work of the Agricultural Loan Society is critical. It is critical because too many of our farmers just don't have the funds to expand. And we commend subsistence farming, you know. We do, right? We commend subsistence farming and we commend backyard farming. But if we are truly to position the country so that we can be self-sufficient, so that we can cut our food importation bill, then an entity such as the Agricultural Loan Society is important and has to work hand in hand with RADA, which will provide the expertise that is needed to transform farmers, not just in terms of how they think, but in terms of how they operate. The other thing that I want to mention, Minister, has to do, and you mentioned the PC Bank in your closing, because from my days at LAMP, one of the things that we sought to do with the PC Bank was to formalize, as you know, that farmers can take your documents to the PC Bank and they'll go through the process and you can get a certificate of compliance. And once you have received the certificate of compliance, then within 7 years, then you, for $500, you can get your actual title, right? So we sought to formalize that. At the time I was leaving, it was not yet complete. I'm not quite sure what is the status now. But the point I'm making is this, that one of the benefits of being a member of the PC Bank is that you can get your document to help you to get a title on the Facilities for Titles Act. And I believe that too many of our farmers are farming, and I spoke about it in my State of the Nation, are farming on lands that they do not own. I am hopeful that one of the immediate activities that the Loan Society can do is to see how they can give support to the PC Bank and to farmers to ensure that they can get titles for their property. And this, you will appreciate, goes back to where I started about food security. Because when you have the title, you can take it to the bank, not just limited to the PC Bank, you can take it to any commercial bank, and you can get a loan to transform your farming, your lives, and your family lives, and thereby the country. So that is something I'm recommending. And I read this morning in the Ministry Paper 94 that there is the introduction of a parametric insurance policy, and I want to commend the government for that. You see, Minister, for too long, we have not provided a kind of security to our farmers. And an insurance such as this, which is going to give some cushion in instances of drought and natural disasters, I think is a positive step. I'm not sure if you're in a position to help me here, but I wonder, though, what are the requirements? Do you have to be a registered farmer with RADA or with the PC Bank? Is it dependent on an acreage that you must farm? I just want to know about it a little bit more. And I want to also put in a plug that such an insurance should be known so that other persons can be a part of it, because it is a good thing, and we must publicize the good things in the country. So I want to just suggest that some more information can be shared with the country at large about it. And it becomes even more important to talk about this insurance, because in the same vein, on the opposite page, it talks about the close to $1 billion that the government has spent to deal with flood damage for the agricultural sector just this year alone. So it supports the importance of the insurance that I spoke about earlier. And it is something I'm commending, and I believe that if the Loan Society can provide even greater assistance to farmers so they too can access this insurance, whether it's a loan at a lower interest rate and they pay quarterly, however it is can be worked out. But I think it's a public good that will inure to the benefit of the country. And with those comments, Mr. President, I just have one suggestion relative to the specific wording of the regulations. And it is at page 6, Mr. President, and section 14, that says mode of payment, and that all payments made by an agricultural loan society or APO approved organization shall be made by check. And I wondered whether we ought to say by the check or online. I mean, in 2021, we have moved beyond just check. In fact, I will tell you something, Mr. President. It is. In fact, Mr. President and Minister, why this is important to see, I went to a commercial bank that shall be nameless to open an account, a business account, and I requested some check leaves. And they looked at me and they said, we don't really do check leaves. No, we encourage you to do online banking. and you know, but I had to explain to them that there's some transactions that you kind of just need a check for. And so, Minister, I'm hopeful that I will not detain the progress of this regulation if you were to accept that proposal. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you for my very brief intervention. Senator Gale.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns. And Senator Webby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. President, I stand to support the regulations of the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021. But before I get into my presentation, may I say, Senator Fraser-Binns, that your brief presentation was an excellent one. I thought it was very good. Mr. President, as I start and I reflect on where we are coming from in terms of the passage of the bill, one of my comments, which I'll get out of the way up front, is that I think it has taken a little too long for the regulations to be passed in both the other house and this house of 4 years. Nevertheless, it is here, and I think it is extremely important that being here, that we can operationalize the Act and the regulations. And I really believe, President and colleagues, that agriculture is the way to go in terms of getting growth in Jamaica. I really believe that strongly, and that's why you see me stand every time I get the opportunity to speak about agriculture. And why I say that, Mr. President, it is critical that we use agriculture for food security, and even more importantly, I think, Senator, poverty reduction. I really believe that. And to achieve those goals, Mr. President, what we need to have is a robust and modernized sector with world-class standards to achieve those objectives, with the headline being food security and poverty reduction. In my mind, Mr. President and colleagues, this requires our agricultural sector to raise our productivity levels through comprehensive training of our farmers, prioritizing our small farmers, Senator Crawford, so one day they can become big farmers. And also, well, somebody whispered to me that goat prices has gone up 50% for the Christmas, but I'm not going to go there. And having created a robust agricultural system, President, this, in my mind, would create a sustainable value-added food products. You know, I've been speaking to the farmers, Senator Bunting, with the advent of COVID-19, and a lot of them were hurting because, Senator Allen, one of the main distribution points for them, being tourism, was basically shut down. And I thought about that, and I said, listen, what we need to do is to diversify our concentration risks with the farmers, with the tourism industry. While the tourism industry continues to grow, obviously, there are great opportunities for more enhanced tourism linkages. But at the same time, we need to diversify our concentration risk. And where my headspace is that we need to put together a system of how we can export these produce all over the world, starting with CARICOM. Mr. President, we need to have a plan in place of how we're going to export more mangoes, more breadfruit. Breadfruit is a hot item. The company that I have can't supply enough to the US market. Processed akis, can't supply enough of processed akis to the market. Sweet potatoes, can't supply enough. Can you imagine, Senator Bunting, that we put in place a real great program, orchards, that now we can produce, not only for the local consumption, but for exports. Great, 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 great. I'm going to hold you to that. But you know, in doing our research, colleagues, one item that jumped out, Senator Gill, which I was surprised about, that it is a big, big market. You know what it is? Green jackfruit. Green jackfruit. Apparently it's very popular with vegetarians, and the demand is there that you can't fulfill. Green jackfruit, and it's coming from Sri Lanka. Senator Bunty, when I said growing, I'm talking about on the international market, like 200% or 300% per annum, green jackfruits. And I see jackfruit trees all over Jamaica, where we can put in place a formal structure that we can get it.
Senator,
Yeah,
Senator
yeah,
Webby, you
sir.
need to address me here.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. President. I know, sir. President. Mr. President, when I get a can of the green jackfruit, I send it to you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it with a lovely drink. Mr. President, I guess, Chairman, on a serious note, President, on a serious note, I guess that when there is a crisis, there's an opportunity. And I'm saying that we need to put the resources behind the agriculture sector so we can start to have a structure in terms of exporting more. The Jamaica brand is very strong anywhere you go in the world. Anywhere you go in the world. Mr. President, my other point on the whole issue of the agricultural sector, and I'm not sure of the history behind it, but what I'm sure of is that the AMC, Agricultural Marketing Corporation, has not fulfilled its mandate. And we need to revisit that in a structured way to ensure that we can unlock the value of the AMC. I have had discussions with Minister Shaw, and he's very excited about having a public sector, private sector partnership to get it going again. But the vision is that the AMC should be the marketing and distribution point for farmers, not only locally, but for the export that we're talking about. So if you are a mango farmer, Senator Golden Campbell, you carry your mangoes there, whether it's the Julia or the Bombay or the East Indian, and they will now package it and export it to the Cayman Islands or wherever. So I believe that we need to get that AMC going properly. Mr. President, I said in jest to my good friend, Senator Crawford, about the rise in prices of food. I read in the Observer article, and the headline stated, global food prices hit 10-year high. The article noted that food prices had risen by more than 30% within the last year. And I want to tell you, as somebody in that industry, that 30% is on the lower side. Because pre-COVID, a container coming out of the Far East was 2,500. Now it's 17,000 US you're paying for each container. So that alone is showing you that the food price inflation is going to be very serious. And it's delayed. The logistics is not good. And that is why I come back to the point again, President, about the security of food for our people. Suppose, for whatever reason, that this freight cost go to 30 or 40,000 is not within our control. But what is within our control is that we can have a vibrant agricultural sector, that we don't need to depend on China for their freight rates and the demand and supply of it. So these are the numbers that I have done my research with, right? So during 2019, the value of food imports to Jamaica was $1 billion. $1 billion. $1 billion US dollars, with approximately 44% of the imports supplied via sources in the United States. So 44% of that $1 billion is coming out of the USA. In 2020, the value of food imports was $900 million. So we have come down by $100 million, with approximately 42% of that coming out of the United States. So in terms of game-changing strategies, we have not made any real improvement. And that's why I've said, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over, as a country, we need to set ourselves, Senator Hill, an objective and has put in place the strategy and the vision to reduce that import bill by 2030 to 50% minimum. Minimum. And this will require heavy investment in agriculture and agro-processing to get that done. As I said before, our farmers need access to technical training and how they use technology and processes. And they need to think big. You know, sometimes when you look on the farming community, you see a man with a little 5 acres and think, we need to think big. Big in terms of technology, big in terms of processes. And what they need is exposure in terms of how it is done in a first world market, so we can adopt that. Senator Fraser-Binns, the PC Bank have their role, but Senator Bunting will tell you, right, lending for agriculture is a specialized skill. If you're not sure what you're doing in terms of risk management and how you adjudicate the loan, you'll get yourself into some real problems. And I'm saying that the PC banks, as it is now, and other banks, should undergo some serious risk management training in terms of agriculture. And I'm saying also that the DBJ, the Development Bank of Jamaica, must play a more integral role in terms of funding for our farmers. Mr. President, I have first-hand experience in terms of putting together insurance for our farmers. It's called GK Weather Protect. And it is working well. However, education is needed for them to understand that you pay a premium of $10, but the risk that you're taking is covered. And I've asked the team, Senator Hill, that we need an educational program to explain to the farmers the importance of insurance and that they can recover a lot quicker when they have bad weather. President, I speak in this House also with the knowledge of being chairman of JAMPRO. Mr. President, another example of public-private sector partnership is the establishment of the Food Security and Agribusiness Council, FSAC, as a part of our national 5-year agribusiness strategy. I'm pleased to say, Chairman, President, my apologies, that JAMPRO is working on 3 high-tech agribusiness projects in the parishes of St. Elizabeth, St. Thomas, and St. James, utilizing cutting-edge climate-smart measures to deliver high-yield crops. Mr. President, hydroponics, aquaponics, climate-controlled agriculture, and solar energy are being utilized to deliver high-quality, predictable food output. As you know, a similar project was done in St. Catherine and is currently producing vegetables for a local supermarket. Importantly, all of these projects plan to transfer technology skills to the small farmers, transfer technical knowledge to the small farmers and integrate them into a mother farm, satellite farm relationship. And as far as I am seeing, that is a win-win-win. Win for our country, win for the investor, and win for our small farmers. These projects, Mr. President, coupled with other initiatives by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, will face the agriculture in Jamaica and enable us to reduce our US $1 billion food bill. And CARICOM import food bill is actually US $5 billion. Can you imagine if Jamaica become the agricultural capital of CARICOM? Look at all the arable lands that we have in a first world technology state. Can you imagine, Senator Scott Mottley, that we would become or could become 30% of that $5 billion exporting to CARICOM? I don't think that's a dream. I think that can be a reality with the proper planning that we put in place. And when we speak about, reducing our own food bill, we should also couple that with a discussion of increasing our exports to CARICOM. So our foreign exchange is going to be that much more, because we're going to save with import food bill and we're going to be exporting more. So, Mr. President, the journey begins. The journey begins. And in that, I'd say that I'm again offering my strong support for the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'd come in, as you realize, I was interrupted. That was your State of the Nation presentation? Oh. Thank you, Senator Webby. Senator Brown.
Thank you, sir. And this is not my State of the Nation presentation, but it certainly could mirror it. We on this side support the regulation, the resolution for this regulation. But the reality is, Mr. President, that our farmers really need support, not just to be able to borrow money, but to be able to borrow and make money on the money they borrow. However, there are a number of obstacles in the path to our farmers being successful. And I just want to raise a few here. And in so doing, I want to start where Senator Webby mentioned the Agricultural Marketing Corporation. That was a landmark project of the man whose 97th birthday we celebrate today, Michael Norman Manley. This was one of the...
Sorry, Senator Brown, when the AMC was created, what year?
After the 72 election victory.
Okay.
Yeah. It certainly was one of the major programs which was pushed. And it was one of those programs that the subsequent government sought to downplay. Suffice it to say, we claim its success that it shared then in the name of Michael Norman Manley, whose 97th birthday we proudly celebrated. It was Michael Manley who, on behalf of the farmers, argued, grow what we eat and eat what we grow. I don't want anybody to ask me if that started with Tufton or when it started. That is a signature of the Michael Manley 72 government. Eat what you grow, grow what you eat. And I'm happy that current agricultural ministers are choosing to adopt that slogan, which they once vigorously opposed. Another effort to help the farmers coming out of that 72 revolution, led by Michael Norman Manley, was the land lease project, which put lands in the hands of Jamaicans so that they could become smarty in their own country. So I'm proud on this 97th anniversary of his birth to recall in this Senate Just a few of the things that he did to transform our country. Had it been another occasion, Mr. President, I could speak about the labor reforms. I could talk about the Bastardy Act. No bastard, not there again. But this is agriculture we're talking about. Even though those legislation apply to farmers who are children out of wedlock. But we're talking about loans for agriculture. Mr. President, one of the obstacles to our farmers making progress is corruption in the society. And the reports of recent time out of RADA doesn't look good for the farmer who would want to borrow money from these agencies. Because that would be necessary to make success. But it seems to me that the minister says resign, and the board say we're not, parts of the board say we're not resigning. That sounds like chaos, confusion. How does that impact the farmer's ability to borrow money and to feel that having borrowed this money, I can make progress? I urge the government and I urge the minister to use his power and fire the board. Fire the board. It can't be that you ask them to resign, some don't resign. What confidence that will give farmers to borrow money? Fire the board. Fire the board is what I ask of you. This rather spectacle cannot be allowed to continue while farmers try to raise money. And then, Senator Webby, I don't know if you're giving hint to Mr. Julian Robinson, who in the other place speaks on financial matters. I recall his last budget speech was about rising prices. And you were a little critical of him for naming some prices. Well, you want to get up?
Mr. President, on a point of order, the photograph that Mr. Julian Robinson showed in Parliament, I was concerned, and it was erroneous. There are a number of incorrect prices there, and Julian and we have had a discussion offline on it, and I shouldn't say surprised, but, you know, Senator Lambert Brown, I didn't expect you to go there.
Senator Brown, you know, if you just stick to what, I know what, you know, it's patently obvious, but just stick to the
That's what
legislation.
I'm doing.
No, you're not.
Senator Webber raised the issue of rising
and you are the person that call up his name. So it's not a point of order that he raised, but he is clarifying.
Senator Webber is a man involved in cricket.
Just move on, man. It's
yeah,
12,
and I'd
21.
say sometimes, Senator Webber, you should leave some balls outside the half stump. That was deliberately thrown wide for you to play at it. I know it is foolishness, but I am glad that with your acknowledgement of the rising prices, which is not benefiting our farmers, because they too are consumers of some of these prices, that when the next speech is made, you will, I tell you, leave the ball outside the house stump, you get caught all the time. You're out in the slips. You're out caught in the slips. So let me move on. Mr. President, for the farmers, I thought I'd get you out with a wide ball. All right. Mr. President, our farmers face... Well, I invite you to do that, because I'll still be speaking. The farmers who are borrowing money from the PC Bank and these agencies are facing serious threats from criminals. While sitting here, somebody sent me the following. 12 o'clock news is depressing already. Farmers' goats were stolen. Farmers and police recover goats. Gang comes and spray farmers home with bullets. That's the 12 o'clock news on RTR. The recording of the shots were played on the news. So very sad. So we are asking the farmers to go out and borrow this money. But their protection from the criminal element, from the lawlessness, is not being secured. And while this is happening, rather is fighting internally instead of working with the police to assist the farmers. So while we support this resolution, we recognize, and like Senator Webby, that there are a number of obstacles facing the farmers, from rising price to them as consumers, from the middleman making all the killing from their produce, from rather failing to be fired by, board failing to be fired by the minister. We make it very clear to you, there are challenges facing agriculture. This, yes, is part of the journey, but way too little to really assist our farmers. We support it because it can help, but there's more need to be done. And Senator Webby, stop playing off a ball outside the house. So may it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown. The newly minted member of the Cane Farmers Association.
The land is no longer in Cane, Mr. President.
No, that's the wrong way around. Thank you, Senator. Senator Fraser-Baines, report to me before you leave. Thank you, Senator Longmore.
Thank you. Mr. President, I rise to give my support to the regulations, a resolution seeking to approve the regulations of the Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Bill. You know, I had to say a few words on this because agriculture is at my core. And health and agriculture is very, very intertwined if we don't realize it by now. I want to just add a few extensions to some of what our past speakers have brought to the fore and probably put another little perspective on it that we might not fully consider at times. Firstly, with respect to food security and the potential for that, Senator Webby, you spoke of some of the atypical products that you are now discovering. Might I suggest that we also seek to explore industries that relate to medicinal plants and what I call herbaceuticals. This is a very, very growing industry, and the Jamaican product is very much appreciated in these spheres. I know persons from China actually are actively at this moment trying to seek Jamaican-produced medicinal plants for use there in their industries. Another industry emerging is mushrooms, for food. We are very sensitive now to mushrooms for other uses, but there is a growing interest in mushrooms for food. And this is another dimension that we can explore. Another very health-related dimension that we might not consider is what we call the gluten-free industry, which is where Jamaica is blessed to have a number of naturally occurring starch products that are gluten-free. And this, especially throughout the European and North American Canadian markets, has great potential for its development. And so these industries, our sweet potato or green banana or cassava, all those naturally occurring starches that are gluten-free can be very significant in our population.
Sorry. When people refer to gluten, that is something that is found in flour.
In wheat, usually, yes. Wheat-based things.
So anything else that doesn't have flour, cassava, for example, would be good gluten.
Right. And what you're finding is that you can develop these things. So imagine a pasta that is made from cassava. Imagine a pasta that is made from sweet potato. Imagine a pasta that is made from breadfruit flour instead of those. And these are where we can take our agricultural and our agro-processing. This would be tremendous in some of our for some of our external markets. There's another dimension to, and let me just add that there's a significant health benefit from this diet that consists of these gluten-free products. A lot of the neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, ADHD, has actually been shown. As a matter of fact, the gut lining and the brain is actually developed embryologically from the same neural plate. And so what you eat significantly affects your mental health and especially child development. And we find that a lot of kids who have these disorders, they're actually sensitive to gluten. And so a switching diet can significantly improve those situations. Another dimension for agriculture, and my appreciation of it, is of course the therapeutic aspect and the therapeutic intervention. Mr. President, at times I go with a friend of mine who is a family court judge and she deals with some of the issues with our juvenile offenders. And I sit in there because for me, it's how I also get in touch directly with some of the issues that I have to deal with. And I see graduates from the child diversion program, and when they come in, and they have completed the program, and then they're kind of somewhat left with nowhere to go. They're motivated to want to do something. They have gone through the child diversion program that we have in place. They are now seeking and they want to tap into something productive. And this is usually the young persons who are in their late teens into early adulthood, who have usually no avenue. And in my mind, it would be tremendous if we could see where our agricultural prowess and our agricultural avenues can be channeled somehow to facilitate some of these young people who are coming out of this said child diversion program. Farming can be quite therapeutic, not to mention there is economic viability, as Senator Crawford can fully relate to. And so I think that this is something that we could also consider in terms of a further extension of that effort to save our at-risk youth. There are two other dimensions that I would want to explore. And it is in terms of these regulations and these organizations making special facility, not just for our youth who may be interested in farming, but also our women who may be interested in farming. I think that there is great provisions and great possibilities, and especially where we're seeing that young persons are not usually attracted to farming and are not usually pulled into it. We're seeing where one of the main challenges that with farmers as they grow older is that you don't have a transition. You don't have that continuity, that legacy planning to see to whatever they built being continued with their young persons. And oftentimes, a lot of what happens is that you see these older farmers, the farms just run down, they're not being seen to, and the younger generations are trying to seek get-rich-quick options elsewhere. And if we were to seek to enable young persons getting more involved in farming, I think that could go a far way. Of course, the same goes for our women. A lot of times our women are victims of domestic violence and victims of abuse simply because of an economic situation. And as much as we can help to facilitate such, I think that would be significantly tremendous for our society generally. And lastly, Mr. President, it is, I think, imperative for us to remember that your diet is your bank account. It's like a bank account. And whenever you make good food choices, you're making an investment in that account. Your food is your health. And more, I think that agriculture, as has been said by many of our speakers, it will be and it is a savior for our country. I thank you, Mr. President.
It's not State of the Nation yet, time yet.
Yes, sir. I got to be.
Thank you very much,
I'm going to say all the time for...
Thank you, Senator Crawford. 1 minute, Minister. Senator Crawford speaking.
Listen, man, you know about farm? Yes, sir. No. Yes. I don't want to be shy. Because sometimes experience teacheth wisdom. But they say foolish minds seldom differ. And when I heard Senator Webby speak, I had to draw for the last manifesto presented by the People's National Party, for which I had something to do with it. It says, the PNP will establish the National Agriculture Marketing Board that will be tasked with the responsibility of A, taking advantage of CARICOM protections, B, entrenching Jamaican agriculture in CARICOM in terms of items such as eggs, vegetables, poultry, fish, fruits, seasoning, grown provisions, and others, and C, special focus on strengthening the global brand appeal of industries such as Jamaican coffee and cocoa. You see, we have a great advantage. A lot of people don't know the protection that CARICOM can offer, and that many countries have taken advantage of with Jamaica. But the protection that CARICOM offer, we have a great agricultural advantage because of our size. The size of Jamaica relative, it's not usually we say Jamaica have an advantage in size. But in CARICOM, we definitely do have an advantage in size. And because of that size advantage, we can take further advantage of the protection by being the agricultural center, the breadbasket of the CARICOM society. The other advantage, Senator Samuda, is that the taste of the Caribbean is similar to the taste of the Jamaican society. And so the things that we produce are the things that they naturally consume. And so therefore, simply expanding on the things that we produce will cause for ease of consumption within the spaces that they already culturally consume similar items. But we have consistently been dropping the ball because one of the requirements of protection, I think, is 70% of the needs. 70% of the needs are CARICOM. So you cannot apply until you have started to entrench that industry to the point that it is at 70% of the needs. So if we say, okay, we want protection for eggs, when we go to apply, we haven't put the facilities in place to be at that point to apply. So we might be producing 30% of the needs. We can get to 70 now, but until your application will not be granted at that particular point in time. So it takes what you would call confidence to go out and do, and then to go and apply, so that we can get into these things. Now, as it relates to agriculture, competitive agriculture needs capital. You cannot be competitive unless you have capital. And I can tell you some simple examples. If you establish a 10-acre plot of king grass for goats, and this is just the thing that I am in now, so I know, you can get the same amount of crude protein than if you were buying 100 bags of feed per week on 10 acres. If you buy 100 bags a week for $2,300, 10 acres of king grass, which is a grass grow high like cane, can give you the same amount of crude protein. Basically for free. You water it, you cut it, you get it. You take money if you establish that 10 acre. It takes money either to lease land, to get tractor, to do all these things. And so you now incapable of getting that initial money, running up and down every day buying the feed. Now this feed is consistently increasing because it uses some soy, uses some wheat. That is a part of the import. A part of the import is that, Senator Bunting, when we sell a pound of pork or a pound of goat or a pound of cow or whatever, beef, 3/4 of it is coming from the feed that it consumes, which is imported still. A pound of fish. Same thing. So when we start to do the research and find that cassava can be an adequate replacement for some of the soy content that we're putting into feed, yet we're not jumping into that aspect of it. So when you sell $1, well, we're coming to the teeth. The teeth can't trouble cassava. I don't know if it's poison. But when you come to $1 of local mutton, it have 70% of imported feed.
So the price is going to go up as well,
And that's what is happening. Chicken feed has increased at least 5 times in the last year. So if chicken feed increase, egg have to increase, chicken meat have to increase, it's a natural reality. So some of this agriculture that we are looking at is almost automatically farm to table, and we're not looking at the support systems. For example, hay. There is an opportunity for hay farming because you have a lot of people going out now to do animal farming. I know of one company coming in with a lot of cows for milk. And when that company comes with cows for milk, there is going to be great opportunity for a man to say the cow will eat something. We can produce hay. There's an opportunity for hay farming. There is a support agriculture that is constantly ignored because we always talk about the human consumption before we look 2-3 steps down the line with all the other consumptions. You know how much American corn sell to animal consumption? So when we look at cassava, there's a lot of science coming out of Africa and other places showing that cassava can be a great input in animal feed, especially ruminants, that we have not been looking at and we have not been taking advantage of. I'm working with a little grants committee now, and we work out that 10 female goats, Senator Samuda, 10 female goats can earn a household $600,000 for the year. 10 female goats. 600,000. Well, he'll have to go sleep with them and all these things. but based on 5.5 months to having a baby, and based on 2 babies per, 10 female, if you sell all the offsprings, can give you more than minimum wage. So when Senator Webby said that he can help with poverty reduction, it is no joke. It is, I did say it a few times, but time will prove. Times have changed.
And there were people marching.
And I can tell you something, and in all seriousness, Senator, Minister Shaw visited my farm, and I am very grateful. He was very gracious. He carried everybody that had something to do with it. He came early. But when he said he was proud of me, it wasn't less than if P.J. Patterson said it. To me. When he said he was proud, it wasn't less than if P.J. told me. And he was genuine. He was excited. And he was facilitatory of just the industry. Just saying the industry can move, this can move. And I was very pleased. And I'm happy to hear what Senator Longmore said, because me and Senator Samuda have been in conversation to say that because farms have a kind of custodial vibrations, most time a man working on a farm, him live on the farm, that these younger people coming out of these diversion and stuff like that, farms could facilitate their reintroduction within the society. And the initial point where them spend with the government could train them, because you can't get a trained youth now. You can't get a trained farm hand. You can get a trained farm supervisor coming from Case. You can get a trained farm manager coming from Nakalva. But you can't get a trained farm hand. You get a youth and you're losing pounds, you're losing crops, you're losing per acre if you can't get this. So therefore, and Senator, you're to come, and we have been discussing that. And I'm happy to see, because the farming can serve, because they then graduate to become their own farmers. And as I said, 10, them have to be, everybody not going to be big. May I try to reach 1,000, but everybody not reach 1,000. We have enough space, Senator Janice, for 112,000 mothers, more goat mothers, for what we are import now. 112,000. I am one of the biggest farmers in goat with 312. I don't know if you mind I say.
And on the scheme of things, it's that small operation.
I am a baby. Yeah. When you go to these buyers, like a Price Smart, you know what Price Smart say when they say you have goat? I will take all. Them don't ask you how much you have. So large is there. their demand, well, you have to have it stopped. But so large is their demand. But if you're going to do this, the housing, the security, my security, electric fencing, I'm not talking about my outside fencing, I'm not talking about the dog, was $3.7 million before I buy one goat. So a regular man, if him cannot borrow that, and nobody going to use that as collateral. When you go to get a loan in agriculture, every bank is saying you have to use your house. You cannot use the assets for agriculture. They like to say it is too specific. An automated Cub 17 million, you can't use that, it's too specific. Can't sell it back easy enough. As you said, the training is necessary because it's easier to get a Benz. The risk management training. It's easier to get a car for 7 million and can't pay fee than to get a loan that could make a 40 million. Because the thieves have increased the risk of agriculture in totality. It's not just your risk now, you know. The industry risk is so high that the bank is afraid. Yeah. Can you imagine you lend me some money to buy 100 goat, tomorrow 50 gone? Yeah, and I tell you, it's not abnormal. It's not abnormal for a man carry out him goat. We in some local, where you call some Facebook clusters now, where you speak about goats and things. Man carry out him goat, and them throw fishing net over the man and take all his goats. All his goats. Can you imagine? That man came on TV showing that he man do crab. The next day, there's a joke within the goat industry that your role is to make your goat harder to thief. That is what they say, that you want to make it, that a man cut him off of your farm, go to a next farm, because they will steal it. And we don't know, when you go to get a loan, when a people reap your onion, people reap your tomato, we need that type of consideration. But how do you ensure the theft of a goat? You almost couldn't afford it. So when you go to the bank, that risk, that's why DBJ and these people must come in with some collateral systems that can allow for a man to say that I have a proper plan, I have an outlet market, the market is confirmed, so if Grace, I'll buy pepper from him, if he produce pepper, I'm supposed to can go get some money to get the pepper. I shouldn't have put up my house. And if I have no house, we'll never get to get that loan. All my loans is based on my assets, none of it based on the farm. No cash flow. No matter how you're sure, I have contracts to sell people willing to buy. Then now, as you said, the hotels. I was selling, I lost 73% of my business in COVID. Because liquid egg is a hotel consumption. And the day when the country lock, you're just getting calls. We don't need it, you know. Country lock, what are you going to do? No. When you want to start back, because everybody coming back now, you're ready again. That risk is now being perceived by the bank now. To say, boy, we're not past this COVID thing yet, you know. So we don't know if you're going to get a next lockdown. How you going to operate if you can't get an insurance for that then? If we are tied in a single industry, somebody should be willing to give us a pandemic insurance that if the industry fails, that, and this is unlikely. Not every day a pandemic will come. But we have large hotels and small farms. It is very likely that one hotel taking 10 farm 100% of their products. It is very likely. So a man supposed to can say, okay, I'm supplying sandals and I'm insuring myself against sandals failure. I'm supplying the hotel industry. I'm insuring myself against the industry's failure. You understand what I'm saying? Because of them things, Jamaica can go to the bank to say that we will survive. The bank not taking that risk. So we have to indemnify, is that the term? Ourselves of that risk. So that the bank will consider us as a real business. Just like if we want bill house. If I want bill house, I'll get the money quicker. If I want to buy car, I'll get the money quicker. Almost every business have access to loans more easily than us in the agricultural sector. The final question I want to ask is, what's the role of the credit union? Would the credit union have to re-register as an agricultural loan society? Or can they just add that to their, because the habits of the farmers are already entrenched in credit unions.
Yes, man, and a good institution.
In credit unions. And I learned of some money, Senator Webby, came to the banks at 3%, being unlended to farmers at 10%. Government sources. Government gave some banks some money. Because most of the money come through these established DBJ money. Coming to us at 10%. And then in that, there are fees. Some big fees. Better you have to borrow some money to pay the fees. You understand? So therefore, when you look at what is happening, maybe the credit union in how they operate, in the people that they deal with normally, may be able to better understand and facilitate some of these agricultural personnel, So I would hope that there is a route through which the credit union could become recognized as agricultural loan societies so that they can treat their customers who are already existing. So I celebrate the movements and the directions that we are going with this. I celebrate the level of support within the Senate and within the House. I didn't know you were a farmer, but then I was reminded lifelong pedigree in farming. Senator Bunting also have pedigree in farming, right? And Janice is coming. You understand? Senator Webby has been facilitating farmers for a while. And Senator Rodriguez is letting me know that she's going to be the next biggest goat farmer. Every time she buy one, I buy one. So therefore, I'll be one ahead. But that support should lead to laws and policies that can make us become the breadbasket. So I support this 100%, and I congratulate the government for carrying it forward to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Crawford. Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say, Mr. President, my friends have focused on, and without being unkind or otherwise, I say, focused on the issues which are peripheral to the regulations before us. Because essentially what the regulations are seeking to do is to establish the fiduciary relationship between the present operators, that's meaning the PC banks and the cooperative societies and the cooperative society. So I'm really grateful to my friends who have indicated across the board that they are in agreement. But let me address some of the issues which have been raised, which are will assist those persons who manage to navigate the rather treacherous waters, being the agricultural sector. I know of some of the things of which Senator Webby speaks. If one were to take red peas, we are importing somewhere in the region of 5,000 tons of red beans out of Belize. And that, and we have onions which follow, and there's several products of which we have the capacity to produce. So we certainly could become the center of production, given the level of the lands that we have available. But it goes back to the issue of raising capital to engage in such activities. And Senator, I think it was Binns, who mentioned the lack of having the support, the things like titles. And I just say in relation to that, in relation to titles, the recent amendments that we have done to the registration of titles provisions should make it easier for our rural people. Because I know that out in the rural communities you have the adjudication committees which are out there, and the usual yes, the difficulties that they used to face in having surveys done and getting people to swear to declarations that they've known the land for upwards of 50 years or whatever, those are have been, as my friend Senator Hill says, been systemized. So it should make it easier. But with all of that, we have the other obstacles which were spoken of. And I'm sure that as time goes by, that we will find it easier to maneuver in the system. Well, one difficulty we have is the whole issue of predal larceny, which I think it is going to take some time before that is adequately dealt with, given that we have a history of marginalizing a certain sector of the population. We haven't given them lands, and we haven't trained them, but that is not directly related to the regulations which are before us today. So I'd say that we can all work together to solve those issues, but they aren't solved by critiquing the regulations which we have before us. And I couldn't agree with Senator Binns about the issue yes. and Senator Webby too, about the whole issue of food security. It is something that we at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs we're grappling with, even in the area of fishing. We allow into our region trawlers who they come here illegally, some of them, and they take most of the fish and they're gone off to supply other regions. So we have the issue at sea, where we have the trawlers are coming through, and we have the issue at land, where people who are deprived are, some of them not so deprived, but they still make use of what they see around them. So I believe with the issue, we can solve more easily the land issues. We can improve our security by, as Senator Crawford says, by training a lot more of these people. And I believe that with Senator Bunting can help us in this regard. He can make venture capital more readily available for those of us who he's good. It is something for a long time that we've been grappling with. Agriculture generally is deemed too risky for, but I think as more people come to understand and use the technologies available, then it will become more profitable. In terms of the insurance aspect of the things, it is difficult to say to a private insurer who has to set up a policy framework for agriculture that you must charge a given rate. He must assess the risk, and that is really in another playing area altogether. Because when you can have actuaries and put them in a room, I think it is extremely difficult. So that may very well be something that the state may have to get involved in by providing some level of subsidy for people who are entering into the market. Because as it stands, insurance companies are really there to make, well, to make a profit. Yeah, it's a profit-seeking business. And if I know anything about insurance, you don't make money from insurance premiums. It is, you take the premiums and you invest in some other area other than the business of insurance. It is taking the premiums which are going to be deferred 2-3 years down the road as the risk materializes. So it is more likely that we'll have some input from the state. And I see, whilst Member of Parliament Floyd Green was at the ministry, in fact, I think he did it and engage one of the insurers, and they have provided a limited level of security for the players in the industry, and I sincerely hope that is extended. With those comments, Mr. President, I'd ask for that the regulations be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Campbell. The Agricultural Loan Societies and Approved Organizations Regulations 2021 resolution. Motion has been put and debated. Those in favor? Aye. Against? Thank you. The motion has been approved. Minister?
Mr. President, we're going to continue the State of the Nation debate, and today we're pleased to have, for the second time, Senator Damion Crawford to present.
Thank you.
Enjoy being in the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Crawford. Senator Crawford, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I was saying I quite enjoy being in the Senate. My colleagues keep me quite entertained and indeed informed. So I am happy that I'm in the Senate. And I heard that we were having lunch today. We're all having lunch today. Oh, Lord. Oh. Senator Longmore suggests you pay mine. Thank you very much, Senator Longmore. But, Mr. President, I'm pleased to be scheduled to speak today on a day that is a former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Michael Manley's birthday. The Honorable. He's not yet on his birthday. And I think that the Senate, did we acknowledge? Okay, but I think that we should acknowledge the birth of a very great man. Yes, and this is where he started. Now, Mr. President, I take the opportunity of my State of the Nation debate to offer critique and recommendations of the government's management of our COVID-19 pandemic. The areas of conversation based on the time constraints will be focused on the health response, the education sector, the entertainment sector in particular. So, President, the health response can be categorized into two broad categories, namely recovery and prevention. It is an important distinction to make as it removes one of the major quarrels we're having. One of the major quarrels we're having within our society is whether ivermectin works or it don't work, or ivermectin versus vaccination. But there are two different conversations. If ivermectin is recommended or if it works, that is in recovery. The vaccine is in prevention. So therefore, there are two different conversations. I don't understand the debate that if a medicine is important as versus a vaccine, because the vaccine is in the prevention phase and the medicine is in the recovery phase. And so therefore, what we have recognized is that there are two basic approaches that the government must be concerned with: the recovery, for which I'll discuss first, and the second, the prevention. The recovery, Mr. President, has been based mainly on hospitalization and beds availability and on oxygen. Oxygen, unfortunately, has been short twice of the 3 times that we have had a COVID-19 wave in our society. It has been reported that there was an oxygen shortage dated August 26 to 2029, and before, an oxygen shortage dated March 12 to March 14. It is not unreasonable for one to assume that the lessons from March would have assisted in preventing the debacle in August. While the minister would want to argue that, and I quote, "is no time for a blame game," both the ministry and IGL, the sole supplier, has pointed fingers at each other. It is for this reason that I believe the call for a probe by the leader of the opposition is reasonable, and I too join that call. It is being suggested that had it not been, or as the lawyers would say, sine qua non, had it not been for the lack of oxygen, some of our citizens that died would not have died. That is an assumption/accusation that is worth probing, especially where there are assertions that the government was negligent. As reported in the Gleaner article, IGL is asserting that the government was indeed negligent. The Gleaner article dated September 2nd, 2021, oxygen neglect, IGL says health authorities ignored requests for supply forecasts. However, the government rejects this claim. And the government says in another article later that day, MOH rejects claim made by IGL over medical oxygen supply. A probe is therefore needed to identify whether, where in these two statements is the truth, and what, if any, compensation is due to the individuals who has a reasonable claim of, had it not been for the oxygen debacle, their loved ones would have been or had a better chance. Example, 37-year-old nurse Deidre Cunningham, and may her soul rest in peace. Once again, there are two different stories. Gleaner article, dated August 31st, 2021, the Western Regional Health Authority refutes claim that oxygen shortage led to the death of Westmoreland nurse. It quotes the head of the Western Regional Authority as saying, quote, "I can assure you she got the best care and there wasn't any oxygen shortage. We would have made special care for our own, especially in times like these." However, again, in another Gleaner article dated later that day, it had a headline, "We had no oxygen. Doctors insist supply was late for nurse who died." Again, Mr. President, here we have two different stories, and it is reasonable for us to ask for there to be a probe within to which of these two are being truthful. This is in line, secondly, with the statement made by the husband of Ms. Deidre Cunningham, Mr. Ryan Cunningham, who stated that she died because of lack of oxygen. He repeated in an interview with the Gleaner that, "I feel that the system has failed. I feel that the system has failed." She kept asking, "When the bulk oxygen going to come? I feel like the system has failed me." Her last word was, "Baby, when is the bulk oxygen coming?" A probe is needed to at least attempt to give justice to Mr. Ryan Cunningham and to their 3 children ages 3, 7, and 12. Additionally, there must be some attempt at justice for the others who got no mention in the media but might have been alive had it not been for the government's negligence, if IGL is being truthful, or for IGL miscalculations if the government is being truthful. Indeed, the IGL statement states that with Mr. Patrick Graham, Managing Director of IGL, said, "Without a response to repeated requests for forecast of requirements from the authorities in Jamaica for medical oxygen in over recent months, IGL invested millions of Jamaican dollars in upscaling our facilities and storage and distributing capacity." So IGL is suggesting that over multiple requests were not even given the obligation of a response. And in a time of a crisis, that would definitely be negligent. Mr. President, there's reasonable basis for inquiring to the health authorities if they were negligent in their handling of medical grade oxygen shortage and if that directly resulted into deaths. The country must engage in the challenge to ascertain if the government failed in its obligation to put systems in place to ensure that sufficient supply of oxygen would have been available in the context of anticipated high demand. Indeed, some legal luminaries that have suggested that an interrogation of the written communication between the Industrial Gases Limited IGL and the Ministry of Health and Wellness is necessary. There's a lawyer, Motondo Mukulu, who was a former public defender. He said that there could be an interrogation into whether or not the quote, government failed in an obligation to put systems in place to ensure that sufficient supply of oxygen would have been available in the context of easily anticipated high demand. Another lawyer, Anthony Williams, argues that as a part of a duty of care owed to patients, there is a requirement to access the patient population and the available stock of oxygen, as well as the expected hike. Mr. President, I'd like to make the recommendation that the country seeks to store 600 cubic meters of bulk oxygen. It is projected that for 1,000 beds, a requirement of 400,000 cubic meters of bulk oxygen at the maximum is needed. We have never had a demand over 1,200 beds. And with this new variant, I would suggest that we make haste to ensure that we seek to have a storage amount before the demand is too high. The second area of treatment, Mr. President, is beds. The other aspect of treatment, as I said, is beds. Again, we're stuck in the realm of a recurring decimal, where each time there's a COVID spike, there seems to be a chronic shortage of beds. There is a need for greater dissection of this notion. Jamaicans have been led to believe that hospitals are being overrun, filled to the brim with COVID patients. But is this so? Further discussion is needed as the Prime Minister himself continues to give this impression. In an article, in a recent statement, he said, and I quote, "The government will ultimately have no choice but to allocate a finite set of resources to managing COVID-19 related hospitalizations, including a fixed number of beds. We cannot continue," he says, to dedicate virtually the entire capacity of the health system to dealing only with COVID-19 to the detriment of the other health system users. The media has also been complicit in seeking to sell this notion that COVID-19 has been overrunning the hospitals. In an article in the Gleaner, it says, "Bed on brink, COVID crisis escalates as moderate and critical cases near 100. This was in February 2021. It later said in the article, Cornwall Regional at the time had 339 beds, of which 41 were allocated to COVID-19. So when they say 100% of the beds were being used, at this time only 12% of the hospital's total beds were being dedicated towards COVID-19. So when we keep selling this notion that, oh, we have no more beds, we have no more beds, no more dedicated beds, of which there was only 41. The vast majority of the 339 was not being dedicated to COVID-19. Further analysis of the same article showed that the hospital could accommodate 354 patients. 331 had reportedly been at the facility as at the time of the announcement. 109 of those would have been COVID patients. Now, Mr. President, why is it important that we have this consideration and this conversation? Because there is a further analysis that needs to be done. The total beds within Jamaica, hospital beds, are standing at 5,000 beds. This would suggest that the bed nights, 5,000 times 365, would be 1,825,000 bed nights. Now, when we did our analysis, it told us that at the time, over approximately 8,000 persons were hospitalized for COVID-19. Mr. President, again, I am repeating for the purpose of this House, it is impossible to get information from the government whenever there is a need for a debate. I made multiple attempts to find out what is the latest figure, and that was not being provided. Now, many people like to associate communism with socialism, which it is not. But the control of information is a communist effort. Yeah, information must be free in a democratic society. But, Mr. President, our last report was 8,000 persons, with the average length of stay ranging between 7 days and 35 days, with the length of stay ranging between 7 days and 35 days, based on the presence of comorbidities and other issues. The average stay as reported by the medical practitioners is between 10 and 14 days. To this extent, for the year to date, COVID-19 would have taken 112,000 bed nights, for which there is 1,825,000 total bed nights. This calculation suggests that year to date, COVID-19 would have accumulated 6.13% in bed nights. If we just for safety multiply that by 2 to say it's not 8,000, it's 16,000, COVID-19 would have taken 12.26% of the total bed nights. Now, Mr. President, if you look back at the Prime Minister's statement, what he suggests is simply not true. He said we cannot continue to dedicate virtually the entire capacity of the health system in dealing only with COVID-19 to the detriment of other health users. This is simply not true. Now, why am I being a stickler for this, Senator Samuda? I'm not sure. We'll discuss it. I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm saying that the total beds available. All right, yes. But let us see what the Prime Minister said. He said, we cannot continue to dedicate virtually the entire capacity of the health system to dealing only with COVID-19 to the detriment of other health system users. If there are spaces that cannot deal with COVID-19, then non-COVID-19 health users could be diverted to those spaces, and COVID-19 diverted to the areas that are able to handle COVID-19 users. What I'm saying is selling to the public that COVID patients are in somehow overrunning and taking away their opportunity for health care. It's an unreasonable suggestion, an untruthful suggestion, and one that divides the society between those who are vaccinated and not vaccinated.
Senator Crawford, you are saying that you try to get the information and can't get it? There's information.
The most recent information, sir. So what I got was 8,000, but I did not get to date yesterday or day before yesterday.
I'm going to make a suggestion to you that you call Carl Bruce at the university, because he's very open and will provide the information that you
All right, I will, sir. But as I said, my numbers still stand up even if I multiplied it by 2. But what I'm saying, sir, is that it shows water on the narrative that COVID care may have to be denied because COVID has acted as the chief functionary in the denial of care to other clients. Most times when it is being suggested that we should have stronger and more strict treatment of COVID patients, it is based on an assumption that they have robbed all the rest of us of the possibility of getting care. The numbers suggest that this is not true. In fact, the Prime Minister says that hospital resources won't be stretched to care for the unvaccinated. And this is a very dangerous statement. And that's why I'm happy when the nurses and the doctors stated in another Gleaner article that we can't turn away anyone who comes for health care because they are vaccinated or not vaccinated. And I want to make it clear, Mr. President, I am vaccinated. Yes, I need to make it clear, because I've seen many people suggest that I am not vaccinated. I've even seen a video purporting to be me, telling people not to be vaccinated. I am vaccinated. Not only am I vaccinated, I made an hour-long video trying to encourage people on Facebook to be vaccinated. I then went further to take public debates with entertainment practitioners to discuss why people should or should not be vaccinated. But that don't fit the narrative of the individuals who wants to say that for some reason I am not vaccinated. I am vaccinated. But I am saying, Mr. President, that there can be no way that a policy option is to treat persons differently who are vaccinated and unvaccinated when it comes to health care and accessing health care. There can be no way at all. I'm not sure because it changes often, but the premise, the premise of the argument is that based on their action or inaction, that they are somewhat at fault for not having acted appropriately, and by extension, care might not be granted. That's the simple premise. Now, if you should carry that to its final conclusion and extend that premise, are we saying that HIV/AIDS patients might not receive care if they didn't use a condom? Are we saying that persons with diabetes might not receive care because they didn't eat properly? An individual with cancer because he smoked, or ganja psychosis because he chose to consume the ganja. It's a very, very, very dangerous premise. Would we say we're not going to treat people in an accident in A&E because they were speeding? We are going back to the time of prejudice, where there used to be signs that says no blacks, no Jews, no dogs. We're going to a time of prejudice, that it is almost accepted for everybody to say no unvaccinated, and that is a sign. And the Prime Minister has jumped onto that bandwagon to argue that these people are somewhat to be totally blamed, when the truth is, while many of us now have a chance, we don't really have the chance. And it's a very different conversation. We don't have enough vaccines that if all of us should choose to be vaccinated, we can get those vaccines. We don't.
Mr. President, given that the Speaker's time has...
Senator Brown, just relax now, please. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. President, given that the time is now 1:20, I'm asking that the Senate, it's time for the Senate be extended to finish the business of the day.
Thank you, Senator Hill. The question is that the Senate be permitted to sit beyond one. Beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day. Those in favor, Senator Brown? Against? Thank you, Senator Crawford. Sorry to disturb you.
Yeah, no problem, sir. Because the conversation about beds, Mr. President, cannot be left without the government taking its own responsibility for the shortage. The shortage of beds is a function not only of demand for beds, but also the availability of beds. Let's look at Cornwall Regional, for example. A very recent Gleaner article suggests that another $1.4 billion, $1.6 billion will be demanded to carry it to its conclusion. To its next phase. Okay, I'm sorry. This is after $1.4 billion have already been spent. So, well, yeah. 1.7. 3.7 already spent, and 1.6 to be spent to carry it not to completion, but to another phase of another request. So poor has the handling of the project been that even Minister Tufton himself suggests that criticism is justified. Indeed, I read recently where the minister said that Cornwall Regional should be used as a case study. It must, I believe, be a case study of what not to do. Let us look deeper. The original deadline of 2018 was shifted to September 2018, was then again shifted to November 2019, and on top of that to July 2020. And now, December 21, we still don't have that completion. Had Cornwall Regional been completed, would we not have had more beds? And wouldn't this have reduced the number or the burden that the hospital faces? Wouldn't this have saved many Jamaicans, especially those in the West, from the indignity of laying on the hospital floor? How is the government being allowed to claim it is everyone's fault except their own? The conversation of beds also leads us to consider the field hospitals. Again, the Minister of Health was quoted as saying, quote, "Cabinet has approved the makeshift hospital, which is to be completed over the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks and will cost the country 180 million, inclusive of protective gear for medical personnel." This was stated the 18th of April 2020. He said 2 to 3 weeks, we would have had a field hospital at the National Arena. 82 weeks later, we still do not have a field hospital at the National Arena. A quick mathematics where he said 130 persons could facilitate 130 persons. If the spike would last for 2 months, 60 days, 60 times 130 would give us 7,800 bed nights. It means that for a 10-night average stay, 780 Jamaicans would not have had to sleep on the floor in the hospitals had we completed this field hospital at the National Arena. It was promised for 2 to 3. What? I didn't hear you. Yes. That is a brilliant acceptance. So no Jamaican would have had to sleep on the floor had we had this 130 room. How much what? No. If not, I like this because what has happened is that all these considerations must have been made when the Minister of Health came to publicly state that he would put in 130 beds. He said he would in 2 to 3 weeks. He must have considered how much medicine to a bed. He must have considered all of those realities. And not only 2 to 3 weeks, April 2020, 82 weeks since, it has not been done. But not only that, the ministry have also calculated, and in its publication, the Ministry of Health says that they expect that for 1,000 persons being critically ill, that they had enough medication for that. 1,000 persons. So therefore, that 130 beds would have saved at maximum 780 Jamaicans from being on the floor. And if 100 Jamaicans was on the floor, none of them would have been there had we done what was promised 82 weeks ago to finish in 2 to 3 weeks. That is the simple reality. Wouldn't this have saved many Jamaicans? Yes. So take the beam out of your eye and accept the responsibility that you have to provide reasonable access and health care. I recommend, therefore, that the government considers to implement 900 total field hospital beds. And this was a recommendation made by the People's National Party from the start of the pandemic, that field hospitals should be a central consideration. I think Dr. Delroy at the time was suggesting that field hospitals must be a central consideration. And so therefore, because we have recognized that almost every 4 months there is a new spike, that there is now a new variant of concern, Omicron, and the sister, yes, and the sister variant coming behind. And as well, with our low vaccination levels and clearly our high vaccine hesitancy, that we should be prepared for treatment. And to prepare for treatment, I believe that in Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey, we should have a total of 900 distributed among all these areas for field hospitals. If we have sufficient field hospitals, it will then relieve the Prime Minister's concern that the hospitals will not be able to offer non-COVID care, which the numbers don't currently apply. Seeing what is happening in Trinidad recently as well, we should be very concerned. And there has been some utterances from the Ministry of Health that they expect a spike in Jamaica in short order. I also recommend, Mr. President, that we organize a COVID reserve, similar to what we call an Army reserve. And we call upon, and where we would call upon, during spikes, nurses and doctors in late stage of training, the Army, unemployed doctors. And that sounds like an oxymoron, unemployed doctors at this time. I mean, I don't understand. And volunteer doctors from private practice. To have, and that may correct some of what Matthew is concerned about, how much nurses and how much doctors per bed. that if we had a reserves in place, and maybe this is what our army should be doing, instead of sitting at the bus stop and the stoplight, that the army now should be trained to offer, instead of being traffic police, the army should be trained. I was driving past some just today, they never even look to see who's in the car. They're tired of being used as a clown. But in other countries, I see where the army is being used to be emergency workers in the times of spike, trained and able to facilitate that. So I believe that we should have a set of reserves that are on call, and whenever there's a spike, we should call on those. I also did some research with some insurance companies who suggest that it is possible to have hospitalization insurance, COVID hospitalization insurance. Not just COVID, as in when you catch COVID, but if you get to the point of hospitalization, that you could have a card or coverage for COVID hospitalization. And when asked to do a rough calculation, they said that this may cost $2,000 to $3,000 per month. So when you look at it, many of us may be able to afford that ourselves, but the government could also help those who are less able to have a national COVID hospitalization insurance. And a national COVID hospitalization insurance. And I think you're saying they should take the job, but in addition to that, if they should be hospitalized, that may also encourage some of the private practitioners to offer beds for COVID treatment, because full payment can be made through this COVID hospitalization insurance. Now let us come to the conversation of the prevention. And first, we want to look at lockdowns, which the government has been using as a part of its tools available for prevention. A recent academic paper published in 2021 argues, and I quote, "An examination of over 100 COVID-19 studies revealed that many relied on false assumptions that overestimated the benefits and underestimated the cost of lockdowns." And I heard recently the PSOJ was suggesting that we should be moving away from lockdowns. I don't want to misquote, but I think that I read that recently. The most recent research has shown that lockdowns has had, at best, marginal effects on the number of COVID-19 deaths. The limited effectiveness of lockdowns explain why, after more than 1 year, the unconditional cumulative COVID-19 deaths per million is not negatively correlated with stringency of lockdowns across countries. It is possible that lockdowns will go down as one of the greatest peacetime policy failures in modern history. So basically, this academic peer-reviewed paper, having done a meta-analysis of over 100 other articles, peer-reviewed articles, suggests that lockdowns have
Mr. President, on a point of order. Two points.
1 minute. Thank you, Senator Crawford. What is the point of order?
It is misleading the Senate to suggest that the JDF is not actively participating in the COVID fight. The JDF has actively, he suggested it, he said they were being used as traffic police. JDF has been used to monitor your borders for your control reentry program. The JDF has led many of the logistics operations for your vaccine space. The JDF Corps has helped build out the field hospital, of which it was suggested as though we don't have, when we have 4 active now and a new one being built in Savlamar, Mr. President. So that statement, really, JDF, is misleading, Mr. President, and should be withdrawn. Secondly, Mr. President.
I've listened to the first one. Not a point of order, but I've heard you. Next one.
Secondly, Mr. President, the suggestion that we have not added COVID beds to the system is also misleading, and it misleads the Senate and misleads the country and should be withdrawn. The government has added 750 beds throughout the system to the COVID fight, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Additionally, the third point, Mr. President, it's also further misleading to suggest that we have not hired additional doctors, which we've hired up to 200 and 1,500 community health aides, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator Samuda. For future reference, it is my ruling that none of the three issues that you raised fall under the heading of point of order. Please continue.
No,
Mr.
are they? They're on the coming of my friend Senator Samuda as well. I am continuing, sir, but I'm also establishing that this is the second. No, but I'll give him the facts. It's the second time that this misquoting of my presentation has been done. I'm not seeing, and I will not speak behind her back, the leader of government business. But there is a video with my image suggesting that I said lives are not important during the first state of emergency debate. When I said clearly that all lives should be considered, and that little snippet was made. I have not said you haven't added any beds. I'd be foolish. In fact, the private sector did a full thing up by the University of the West Indies. I've said that we have not added the beds that were promised, in particular, those that were promised in 2 to 3 weeks at the National Arena. And I was clear on that 130 beds were not added, and 82 weeks later has not been added. And it was stated...
Question is, Senator Hill.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time has elapsed. I'm asking that the Senate give him additional time to finish his presentation.
Thank you very much, Senator Hill. The question is that the Speaker be permitted time sufficient to complete his interactive presentation.
Yes, interactive indeed. The second thing, Mr. President, thank you. The second thing, Mr. President, I was clear again that I believe we should have reserves for COVID spikes, in particular for healthcare professionals, and I thought that the Army could have been employed for that reserve duty. All the other duties that have been highlighted are well and good, but the Army has also been diverted to sitting at checkpoints. And I said that those checkpoints may be better used, those Army individuals, practitioners, to be members of the reserve. I never once said that the Army was doing nothing and wasn't participating in anything. That is not true. That is not true at all. And I don't remember the third one, but that was also not true. So therefore, but yeah, now to offer that defense is poor. The offer that defense is poor. And then to also state that, oh, we have built others. The one that was promised in 2 weeks was not the only one that was promised. Some of the others that were promised were built, but this one has not been built. And exactly. So it was disrupting me. And so basically, sir, what it has said is that lockdowns has been proven through academia, and over that side might not be satisfied with academia. There's a resistance to academia and academicians, right? But and intellectuals generally. And there was another person over there that stated that a particular person in charge don't like bright people. So therefore, academics not going to be facilitated. But at the end of the day, what the research is showing is that it is reasonable to question the effectiveness of lockdowns. In fact, it went so far as to say that it is possible that lockdowns will go down as one of the greatest peacetime policy failures in modern history. Now, we have to have that conversation because there's a new variant and there might be a similar response of further lockdown based on hysteria, right? And based on the government's unwillingness to be said not to be doing nothing. We're seeing, for no reason, we don't even have 20 people coming here from Africa. So therefore, you know, I don't say it about it. There are some countries that we have thousands of people coming from. They have found the same variant. The entire Africa, we don't even have a straight flight coming from there. We don't even have a category when we're listing visitors from Africa. It's just not sufficient. It's immaterial. And somehow, just to say we're doing something, we just ban the whole, you can't come, Africa is banned. And we're reviewing it and listening to it. And when it is showing up in the states that are coming here and fooling
Mr. President, on a point of order. Yes, Lord Jesus. Just to lend a correction to my colleague Senator, the continent of Africa, with its over 50 countries, has not been banned.
It is a few countries in Southern Africa, so please let us be factual with the information. It's not the entire continent.
Thank you, Senator.
Very, very precise because they're finding the local nitpicks. Countries in Africa, like South Africa and Botswana, has been banned. Zimbabwe, I believe, has been banned. There are other countries within our Western Hemisphere that have shown the existence of said variant, that equal effort was not taken. When if you should look at the logistics of it, those countries will have a higher probability of infecting us. In fact, the trends have shown that it is the existence of a variant in Britain and the United States that have been more correlated with it coming to Jamaica. Person 0 came from one of those countries. That is factual. Good. So now that we have passed these orders, we move to the curfews. The curfews. Another study, this time by Sorties Journals, it says early evening curfews are not effective and may backfire. Now, you know that since this government has been in power, this Prime Minister has been telling adults when to go to his bed, long before COVID. He was doing it with the states of emergency. He was doing it with Zoso, and it seems to take it with great pleasure when it's being announced. Go to your bed at 10, go to your bed at 8, go to your bed at 6. And the research is saying that these early evening curfews, for which we celebrate an additional hour, we have been so traumatized by it that every time he comes with a grand announcement, one more hour, we say, yes, thank you, we recharge, right? Now, Stockholm Syndrome. You must take actions that are effective. You know, one of the foolishest things I've seen is what they do to the poor taxi people. They say you can only have 2 at the back, right? Now, and instead of 3. Now, what is recommended? It is 6 feet apart. There is no vehicle that can have 6 feet apart. So just to say you do something, you rob them of a passenger to say only 2 can be at the back because we are a government who care and we are doing something. Now what that does, it causes more people to be at the bus stop. The bus stop then become a hub for multiple people for a long period of time. A super spreader location. And we must say nothing because they are the ones in charge. That cannot make sense. You must seek to question the efficacy and effectiveness of what you are implementing. They said the worst thing in government is to be accused of not doing nothing. So therefore they just do something, even without, nobody stand up this time. Just do anything. So, listen to this PR curfew now. It says, the research, Senator Samuda, and you're in the cabinet, you should tell them about this research, and I'll provide them, found that 6 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. curfew in Athens led to a 4.63 percentage points relative increase in time spent at home. It had no effect on time spent in groceries, no effect on time spent in pharmacies. Considering that this was an 18.75% reduction in time, it is not sufficient for a 4.6% increase in staying home. So what it has done is to now shift people into a crowd, when crowd is what should be resisted. So when 7 o'clock comes, everybody is hurrying within the same space and the same time. Now, nobody wants to look at these things, but this is what science is saying. It seems that early evening curfews led to more crowding in indoor spaces, which may facilitate the spread of disease. Interventions should be based on thorough analysis of human behavior that anticipates substitution of activities, and the curfew has not. This is what the scientists are saying. And one of the things I used to hear early is just... Sir? You know, that's why I appreciate you. Study number 2. Mr. President. Study number 2. Measuring the effects of COVID-19 related night curfews. Empirical evidence from Germany. And we have to depend on these bigger countries because they often have different areas having different policy. Unlike Jamaica, the whole of it just locked down. They have different areas having different policies. In fact, it says, curfews presents the most restrictive measure aiming to fight the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. A somewhat weaker form are nighttime curfews. Nighttime curfews were imposed all over the world, including US, France, Germany, and Argentina, and still in force in many countries that have been reinforced recently in some countries. Empirical evidence is the only way to reduce emotionality in this discourse and to provide guidance for the decisions of policymakers. In this paper, we examine the impact of local night curfew in one area in Germany, the 5th most populous federal state in Germany, on the growth of incidences of COVID-19 cases during the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Using this setup, we take advantage of the fact that counties in Hesse had the same measures in place, with the only difference that some additionally had to implement nighttime curfews. This allows us to identify the effect of night curfews in isolation. We find no statistical evidence that night curfews were effective in slowing the spread of the pandemic. If you want more, I can't say not one. So what I'm saying is, when they look, as I said, one time my father told me, if you can't change your mind, you can't change the world. Be careful, you just sticking to one thing. The government is sticking to things that have been proven by science to not to work, robbing the economy of activity, robbing the people of earning possibilities, robbing the society of all these things where it has been proven that it don't work. And if you look at the society now, you realize nobody even business about the time that you want to set. People are out doing their own thing within their own time. Once upon a time, the world was flat and now it's round. No. Well, science should not be ignored. Because what has happened is that when we had no facts, no data, no information, we all jumped on trying whatever was available. Now that we have information, should we not provide this information? No, that we have different facts. In their ignorance. This one? Reference. All of them peer reviewed. All of them. We don't do comics around here. This one is. I'll send in the paper, April 2021. No, but I'm moving on. We find no statistical. Now,
This is your state of the nation.
Give me a chance. Because you can disagree. And you can find papers that disagree. What we're saying is that even our own evidence, when the Prime Minister did the initial lockdown in the first wave, proved that lockdown never worked. In fact, it was abandoned by the 3rd week when the spike was still in its heights. And then over time, the spike ended. What we're saying is that the cost of these curfews, the cost of these lockdowns are not reflecting the benefits that they're supposed to carry. I will tell him. And I'm telling you now, to tell Prime Minister Holness not to continue telling us when to go to our beds, because it does not, based on science, work. We go further. We go further. The vaccines. And one of the major problems we have, Mr. President, is vaccine hesitancy. You see, Mr. President, in the case of human beings, risk is personal. It is not the actual risk. It is the perceived risk in the case of human beings. And so therefore, if we seek to understand how people perceive risk, maybe we will have a little bit more empathy for their decisions and their thought processes. Instead of going around like the Prime Minister calling them foo-fool, or what was it again? Boy, you know, I'm going to change the JLP anthem, you know. They must say, my God is so big, so strong, and so mighty. There's nothing my God cannot do. That's what it should be on a new anthem. Yeah. Bro God, and there's nothing. He said some people were foo-foo. He said that some of them were false prophets. But if we understand how people perceive risk, we might have a little more empathy. How do people perceive risk? They perceive risk simply by saying the perception of the probability of harm and the consequence of harm. You see, when the vaccine came through the natural scientists, we should have engaged the social scientists to know, say, how would people respond to the vaccines? And to this date, sufficient engagement of our social scientists to study why the hesitancy and stuff like this have not been done. I'm saying, what are the factors? I say eminent social scientists. But I could say what is happening. I hear some arguments, and the COVID is the worst of humans generally. I hear some arguments being put forward, Senator, that people don't know what is in KFC, but they want to know what is in the vaccine. That shows a misunderstanding of how risk is perceived. Because KFC has had the benefit of time. Over time, we have recognized that we are willing to accept whatever negative that KFC brings. So knowledge and risk are inversely related, and over time, we have gotten knowledge by observation of the interface and interaction with KFC. It is not going to work for us to try and shame people out of hesitancy. It's not going to work. It's better to understand and then educate them out of hesitancy. We have gone further to say that people have taken vaccines before. As I said, knowledge and risk are inversely related. And information is the basis of knowledge. There has never been another medication with so much misinformation and disinformation. There's never been, me myself don't know what to believe. When you see this one say, and he's a doctor, and as I said, there was a video with my face.
It's what we say in social sciences, infodemics.
A whole heap of information. Whole heap of information. We never had that about polio. We never had that about measles. We never had that about cholera. We weren't exposed to all of these people claiming to be doctors and all these things. So this misinformation is, you know, the segregation within our society based on income is one of the reasons why many of the poorest don't have access to information sources that they trust. You know, we have a group called the Butchers Group from UWI. And we are in it debating this thing every day with doctors that were friends of ours. There are many within our society that don't know a doctor that they can say is a friend or a personal associate that I can trust. And one of the negatives about this whole vaccine effort is that we're using the least trusted people, and research has shown that politicians are the least trusted people in our society, to drive this vaccine conversation. Yes, not all have been included. But I am saying to you, no, in truth, if you do some studies, which we have done, the last study said 8.4% of people trust politicians. I'm a politician, so I'm included. Why, with a thing dependent on trust, we are putting the politicians as the forefront of the conversation? It's just not sensible to do. It is better we put doctors at the forefront of the conversation. It's better we put pastor at the forefront of the conversation. It's better we put the clinics. the politicians at the forefront is a disservice based on the people's assumption. But doing nothing is frowned upon in politics. So therefore, we want to make sure that we are there. We have to analyze what's the benefits of taking the vaccine. See, many of us have taken it because we have to travel and XYZ. That's a benefit. Many of us have taken it because we want to live and there's things to live for. But when you look at a man who don't have a visa and can't travel, selling that is not sufficient. So going to say, oh, America want it. Okay, that will take the 30% to have a visa, the next 70% to don't have a visa. So the methods of selling it is flawed because we haven't analyzed how people perceive risk. And also, when you look at a lady with single mother with children, she's perceiving what is the cost of reversal. You see, my good senator, we are in a God-blessed position that if there is a negative, other than that, we can afford most of the reversal. If vaccine, God forbid, should give us cataract, I'm not saying it does, I'm just saying we don't know. If it, no, that's not irresponsible. Just listen first. Okay. As I said, clearly, I am vaccinated. People perceive risk, and that risk is reduced. I did, as I've said, and I've had videos doing it. All I'm saying is if we understand how they act, we can better prepare and to remove those hesitancies. One hesitancy is the cost of reversal of a negative outcome. Persons like myself don't perceive that risk because I can afford that cost of reversal. Persons of lower income, which have been proven to be the most hesitant, they perceive a higher risk because reversal might be unaffordable. I'm saying that because we don't have evidence of time, that risk is real. It therefore would be of benefit for the government to consider an insurance scheme for persons who have negative impact of taking the vaccine. If a man takes the vaccine and knows that he can be remunerated for reversal of whatever injuries he had, it would encourage him more than saying that everybody is indemnified. So therefore, what we're saying is that people need to look and consider these things. And so, the other thing that has affected the vaccine take-up is the inefficient rollout. And if you look at Pfizer, in fact, the Prime Minister's wife and Member of Parliament was very vocal in stating that the Pfizer's decisions were impractical, where you know that the children can only get the Pfizer, but you decided to give everybody all and sundry. And when time comes for the children's second vaccination, there was no vaccines for Pfizer available. And with the current trend of the new Pfizer's coming, some of the children have chosen not to take them second dose. And in seeking that information, once again, it is not available. But many children, I understand, that have taken one dose have not showed up to take them second dose. That should be reported to the society to say this is our situation and this is our circumstance. That has not been reported to the society. Mr. President, I was brought up in a world that adults make sacrifice for children. Our response to COVID has been the opposite. Based on the children infection and hospitalization rates, based on their death rates, school wasn't closed to save the children, school was closed to save the adults. Mr. President, to reduce the risk that children become carriers and infect adults, the burden that have been placed on them has been enormous. Time won't allow for full investigation, but harassment and abuse of children, in particular sexual abuse, has been up. Additionally, anxiety and mental issues faced by children has increased. Lack of learning and learning loss has increased. Some of the reasons include misdiagnosis of distance learning as online learning. And so every time we speak about the fact that they're doing distance learning, they're not face-to-face, we seek to throw online recommendations to it. We'll get you a computer. Internet is needed. But one of the things, Senator Webby, it is the environment for study. School provides an environment for study. And that is why I'm recommending that the Prime Minister reconsiders the work from home as a separate activity than the school from home. The work from home should be tied. How then would a child be home if the parent is not? If there's no adult to create an environment for study. Many people have them computer and them thing not showing up. Some children now just log in. Teacher fair call them name every now and again. Go and watch TV. Because no parent is home. The separation of the work from home decisions as versus the school opening decisions is dangerous. Because those who remain home are often the ones who are most likely to be negative to the children, to attract them to some gang activities. The ones who don't seek employment, who don't have employment, are the ones who are now being accused of abusing them when there is no parent. That facilitation is important. And also, I must say that we must use the church more. We have the most church per square mile up till recently. And we have not thought to use them as a facilitator for environment for study. That parents could drop off their children right in their same community. And then the church will then put volunteers around those children that will then become a facilitator, a space that the children can learn. We tried that with the Jamaica Council of Churches. And I must say congratulations to the president, Pastor Dixon. We do it in St. Thomas. I got some goods from you, Senator Webby, for a look of food and things to encourage them to come. But when you have we just talk about farming. When a single mother is a farmer, she cannot stay home. She must go tend to the crops. What if she's a policewoman? She cannot stay home. What if she's not a part of the work from home order? What if she works at my factory? She cannot stay home. And so therefore, to embrace the church, we could create these hubs, these spaces that create an environment for learning, that at least an adult could watch over the rest of them by using the church as a hub. And I am recommending that we consider that as a system. I'm also recommending that the secondary schools go no further than 5 subjects within the time of the pandemic. We might better be able to facilitate face-to-face 5 subjects, and the other subjects can be online, because the separation of students would take something additional than simply just saying they can be separated. We don't have, when it's a social distancing, how are we going to do it in the same amount of classrooms that used to have 50? And then you add 2 more years with no more. I don't understand how that decision was taken now. And I'm in support of 7 years. But how is that now when the space is an issue? That don't make sense to me. But I'm saying that if we said that no more than 5 subjects face-to-face, it will allow for more social distancing, a greater spread. Are you understanding what I'm saying, sir? Now, I, for one, did 8, and I had friends that did 10. You will learn when you reach 25 that all of them numbers there weren't as important as you thought they were when you were doing all the subjects that you could do. But if you really insist, you can do the rest online. So if we do the math and the English and this and that in the face-to-face, then the ones who want to do online, I'm just putting some proposal, they don't have to be accepted. But I'm just saying logic might allow us to increase the schools. Math and English for 4th and 5th form can be moved to Saturdays and Sundays. I could just reason, I could just put out the logic. They're bigger children, them can more move around by themselves. One of the biggest spreads of COVID has been public transportation. Yes. And that is because public transportation is crowded Monday to Friday between 7 a.m. and 9, and then between 4 and 7. And all the other periods in between. Nobody know them. Very few. I can't say nobody point of information. I saw 3 this morning. Very few was there. So what I'm saying is that if you move the math and English, which are the core subjects for 4th and 5th form, to Saturday and Sunday, you expand the basic school capacity. and they can get there face-to-face, them alone there Saturday and Sunday. And all you need is the number of hours. It's not the number of days. Senator Webby, I was a teacher once. As child get X amount of hours exposure. I have been able to do that in 3 weeks, the same amount of hours exposure, just giving them it continuously. So if them do Saturday and Sunday alone, them could have 4 or 5 sessions instead of 2 sessions on a day. Them could have the full week on the Saturday and the full week on the Sunday, relieving those classrooms for grade. No, because them go to school for the period. Even though them change subjects, they will have sessions from 8 o'clock till lunch. They will really have sessions. And they will have sessions from after lunch till 2:30. The only difference is this is only mathematics. You understand what I'm saying? So therefore, at least the core mathematics, the ones coming up to exams, will still be able to do it. Now if interface with all the workers going from Monday to Friday. Now if interface with the full bus from Monday to Friday. And also relieve the spaces for Monday to Friday to be for grades 7, 8, and 9. And the teachers are normally segmented that way. The teachers are normally segmented, we call little school and big school. 7, 8, and 9 have the same teacher, and then 10 and 11 and 6th form have the same teacher. All I'm doing is making some recommendations that we might be able to take away the sacrifice the children are making. The other thing I'd like to recommend, if we're able to open school, is that we change the school start time within this period to 10 o'clock. We have the children trying to compete with all the adults at 7. And the bus stop is becoming a cluster. Now, if we move this to 10, some of the JUTC buses can become school buses. And those parishes that don't have JUTC could contract some of the private buses that run on the route to become school buses. And then we might be able to separate our children sufficiently from our adults so that they can start to go to school. These are not things that are impossible to do. But these are not things that we have opened our minds to consider. That if they're only doing 5 subjects, them can go to school from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then that will be their thing. So, therefore, as it relates to school, we are recommending that we do that. Major findings, Mr. President. I think I misplaced something here. But, President, what we are recommending for... Yes. Charles, Senator Sinclair don't like what I'm doing over here. And again, I repeat, the decisions from work from home must be tied to the decisions from school being open. If our adults are not home in the main and our children are home, we are exposing our children to unsupervised time and therefore to many, many negatives that may occur. Coming to close, Mr. President, we look at the social response. I didn't hear what you just said. Coming to close. Coming to what? To close. Senator Graham just coming, so I have to give him an hour. The social response. Mr. President, I have always been against food giveaway. Unless there is a reason that the person can't access the food themselves, I've always felt that a person should be given the ability to choose their food. It's the most basic human choice. I am really not in agreement when a man can move about freely with all the photographs, giving a man a food package, choosing. Now, as a private man, Senator Webby, you give what you have. This is what I produce. This is what I give. That's a private man. As a government, a human being should decide, well, I don't eat sardine, I don't want it in the package. If it's a $1,000 package, give him $1,000. Why are we making, it's only pet, you decide for what he eat. A human being should be able to make his own decision. Give him the value of the package. I don't embrace, I don't like everybody taking a photograph with a package of food telling you to eat flour if I choose, or rice if I choose. Who am I to make those choices? If you're lucky in and can't reach a supermarket, or in the early parts of COVID that we were trying to reduce interaction, I was fine. But the continued use of food package, I am not in support. I feel that it is dehumanizing, and I think that we should reduce the pictures that we're taking to show that people can't afford food, the most basic necessity. If you give me it now for the photograph, it now for the internet, I am not happy with that. I am also, sir, against this recommendation that food should be used for vaccine promotion. Not a snack after you choose, that a person who is hesitant, that we should use food to change his hesitancy. You have to then assume that he's so deprived of food that his opinion will change to get it. And then you tie that to his choices. So if a man show up and don't take the vaccine, he don't get the food. No. I see some places put gambling in it that he can get a vacation. I see some places put things so he can win a car. Out of the whole country, one person might win a car. Those things are all right. But food as a motivator, I am against that totality. Then, Mr. President, we tried our care package. The government has stated that they have done the most efficient and effective care package program that has ever been done in our society. This, however, has been contradicted by research. And Capri says that many of the neediest Jamaicans did not access state welfare to cushion the blows of COVID-19. They lived on the fringes of the informal sector or do not have official identification, a study by Capri has stated. Major findings of the study was that fewer than half, or 43% of respondents in both rural and urban communities applied for grants. Senator Brown, fewer than 50% of the people who needed the grants even applied. 43% of those who were in need tried to get it. And it has been trumpeted many times by the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, and many over that side, that this was the best poor relief program that they've ever seen. The research is saying that this is not true. Of this number, 37% of individuals were unsuccessful. So less than 50% applied. And 1/3 of that 50% was successful. So it looked like about 27 or 28% of those who were in need got access to this care package. How can you get less than 30% and say it's the best? I wouldn't want to teach some of them students. And that is my question. Was the objective really to give these people these things when you chose a mechanism that they were least suited for? They are the ones with the least ability to read. The highest level of illiteracy is in this group. You have to apply online. The least access to internet is in this group. You have to apply online. The least access to IDs, identification, it was repeated here in the NITS conversation by that side. They are knowledgeable that these people have limited access to IDs. You have to provide ID. The highest informal operation is in these group. You have to show proof of registration and tax compliance. Even some of those who are registered not tax compliant, right? You have to show proof of that. This is ridiculous. There is no doubt that there could not have been a better result than less than 50% applying and less than 50% of those who applied to get the actual grants. There were some members of parliament trying to apply for people. All the facts suggest that that should not have been so. And so no consideration has been made for our taxi drivers. No consideration have been made for, 2 taxi drivers got a gift basket. So therefore, for our hairdressers and our barbers. And I continue to be against the Saturday lockdowns if we should go back into a spike, because these days are reserved, Mr. President, for the hairdressers and the market vendors and the barbers of this society. In fact, a lot of these helpers who do days work can only do days work when the people are home on a weekend. And when we lock down the weekend as one of the days, we are now locking them out of a week's income. It's not the people who work Monday to Friday and lock down Thursday alone. The hairdresser, week's income is Saturday. The barber, week's income in the main, Saturday and Sunday. The lady who comes sell at the market, her week's income, Saturday. So Saturday should not continuously be used as a lockdown day, even though we have proven that lockdowns don't work. Finally, and I see you ready, Mr. President. Okay, yes. Can you want one more paper? Or no, everything all right. You want one more research? Entertainment, Mr. President. Entertainment has been one of the most affected industries based on our rules for COVID-19. The Prime Minister himself said, we have powerful interests when the consequences come. You can't find anybody. It wasn't their fault. They didn't ask for it. They didn't play any role in it. They didn't keep what they used to keep. But their voice was very loud in asking for and demanding, even protesting, for us to reopen the economy in terms of entertainment. This is what the Prime Minister said. Now, the Prime Minister is running around trying to say that it's everybody else that told him to do it. In fact, he has even said that the leader of the opposition was at fault. I don't know how the leader of the opposition was at fault. But I'm taking this opportunity to clear my name. The 6th of June, the Observer carried an article. Crawford, in an interview with the Jamaica Observer on Thursday, said that if the government is of the view that reopening the sector is too risky, then it must make accommodation for grants to these people affected. They have been unfairly treated, not only because it has not been reopened, but because there are no alternative. If it is not being reopened or cannot be reopened, it is in the opinion of the government, then one thing they can consider is depreciation contributions to those who own assets. So those who own a sound system, lighting, venues, for example, the government should give a depreciation contribution. It was the 6th of June that I made a call that we should consider, instead of opening the industry, to give sufficient contribution to those who had assets and was not collecting rent on these assets. So a man with a sound system, Senator Webby, that have a 5-year lifespan based on technology and all these things, he has not been able to rent that sound system for 2 years. It is reasonable that the government should consider a contribution of a depreciation for him, because other than that, he will lose his entire asset and not make any money from that asset. A man who have a venue, have a piece of property that he has built for a venue that has not been used, he's losing depreciation. This might be 15 years. He should be given some contribution in the form of depreciation. Then, in an interview on Nightly Fix on June 9th, I said I believe that the events should be limited to no more than 200 to 500, with time of reversal if it reaches a certain positivity rate. Further, that if a spike seems inevitable, based on the natural ebbs and flows of the virus, entertainment should consider not opening until the spike has been removed, as they risk being blamed. This was on June 9th. The Prime Minister made the announcement on June 22nd that he was going to reopen, and say everybody was saying that he should have reopened. That everybody never include me. Never include me. But I was blamed in it. Sometimes I know it's me my talk sometimes. And then, this is how ridiculous the plan was put forward by the government for opening entertainment. This is a quote from the Prime Minister in his statement to open entertainment. Senator Bunting, I want you to tell me if you understand this. He says, indoor events held in a covered area with controlled entry, there is a cap of number of persons who can attend. This is how you calculate the cap. This is determined as 60% of the usable square footage, not including bathroom or kitchen, divided by 40 square feet or 100 persons, whichever is lower. Who understand that? That was okay. That don't make any sense to nobody. Keeping. No, Martin never write that one. Martin never write that one. And when I heard this on the 7th of July, there was an article in Loop. Cartoon country, Crawford slams government for entertainment reopening. Not everybody was on board. But the Prime Minister is saying, boy, everybody was on board. But even if everybody was on board, the duty is his to make, because he has more information than all of us, and he has a better understanding of the full scope of activities. In fact, I don't understand how in that presentation of how we would reopen, worship services moved from 30 to 50, weddings moved from 15 to 50. Church? Okay. No more than 10 persons shall gather in an area on the beach, but entertainment moved from 0 to unlimited. It was 100 for small, and then you can calculate it for the big. How the others was barely move, and entertainment just bust out. So much so that the Prime Minister was planning his own dance, that they were going to keep a big bash out by Port Royal. The country was the ones who intervened. Doctors were saying no. But I don't understand how, you know about the big dance at the Port Royal Pier? Port Royal Pier. No point about it. That is facts. But this is the part that got me, because the Prime Minister had this information that we didn't have, that the leader of the opposition never had, that all the others that he said was lobbying never had. The minister, I talk to him now if we got to talk back to the leader of the opposition. The ministry put out a release, Mr. President, the Ministry of Health, in reply to IGL's accusation of them being derelict in their duties. They put out this. I don't think they know what they're putting out. They says on May 30, they were very precise. On May 30th, 2021, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, on reviewing the situation at the time, including the reproductive numbers, projected that a third wave could result in over 10,000 cases confirmed in the peak week and over 180 deaths in the week following the peak week, and that over 1,000 beds would be required in the hospitals for COVID-19 management. On the 30th of May, the Ministry of Health predicted that there would be a spike greater than any spike that we have seen. Yet on the 22nd of June, the Prime Minister decided to fly the gate. There should be no probe in how the Prime Minister come to that decision. Because in review, the Minister of Health was not very supportive. In review, some health practitioners was not very supportive. And maybe it's because they had information from the 30th of May predicting that there was going to be up to 10,000 people sick in the peak week, a need for 1,000 beds, and a need of 180 deaths. What could have suggested to the Prime Minister that 22 days later was the right time to announce to fly the gate? And by the time, 4 weeks after that, the gate had to have a lock right back, with blaming the entertainment as the result. Mr. President, I recommend that the government of Jamaica considers, one, to have a full registration of entertainment practitioners, not only those in the front of the mic, but those behind the scenes. And two, to have a depreciation contribution for owners of assets such as sound system, lighting, venues, and other activities. Again, we reiterate the call of the People's National Party spokesperson on finance, that we should review the surplus by 1% to give us access to billions of dollars that could be spent on behalf of the poor. Mr. President, on the day of the birth of Michael Manley, the 97th celebration of his birth, when I asked myself, what would Michael Manley do 90% of what has been done would not have been it. And that is why he's one of the best leaders this country has seen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Crawford. Members, I understand that Senator Samuda had offered to provide some further information concerning a matter regarding his earlier ministerial statement. He has, Mr. Samuda, 1 minute.
Oh, sure.
He has indicated to me that he now has the information. So I ask that the standing orders be suspended. Yes. Yes, yes, I'm sorry, of course. Of course, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, Senator Hill, as usual, you were right. Thank you, Senator Brown.
Mr. President, given that we've had that very extensive presentation, we're going to suspend, I ask that we now suspend the debate on the State of the Nation for today, which clearly after that we should.
For a date to be fixed. The question is that the State of the Nation debate be suspended for a date to be fixed. All in favor? Against? So I go back to what I was saying before. Senator Samuda had indicated that he had promised some information which he now has. So I'm going to ask permission for him to recommit the question of ministerial statement so that he can give the information. Those in favor? Against?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think both Senator Bunting and Senator Brown had asked us for the numbers of mentally challenged and specifically unfit to plead inmates. As a total set within our facilities, there are 137 mentally challenged inmates, of which 116 have been deemed unfit to plead, 10 are held at Governor General's pleasure, and 11 at court's pleasure. Sorry? 116 deemed unfit to plead, 10 classified as being held at Governor General's pleasure, and 11 at court's pleasure. But I also asked them to check to make sure that the reporting for all of these was up to date as I've been informed. It certainly is up to date as at the end of November as per the legal requirement for DCS.
Would you be able to say what's the difference between the court's pleasure and the GG?
I would have to assist with that if you want.
That's fine if you...
If it is at the Governor General's pleasure, it means that the issue as to the status of the prisoner is final. In other words, it has gone through the court process. When he's referring to the court's pleasure, the matter is still pending in the courts to determine whether, in fact, a hearing has been had, for then the Governor General to intervene in it.
And would that be that at the GG's pleasure, a sentence was already pronounced?
No sentence is pronounced if the person is unfit to plead. But when it's at the court's pleasure, it means that it hasn't been terminated within the court system to go to the Governor General. You're welcome, Senator Samuda.
Thank you, President. And just for further information, within the cohort on court's pleasure, they're between 30 and 50 years old. The cohort on the GG's pleasure, they're between 42 and 71 years old. And awaiting trial because of their unfit to plead status is between 19 and 80 years old.
Consistent with the tradition of written statement, consistent with the tradition of written statement, could you share that with us after?
No issues, so I will send a note through the clerk for members.
Thank you very much, Senator Samuda. Thank you, Senator Brown and Bunting. Just before I call on the Minister to bring our session to an end today, just two matters to bring to your attention. The first being that the staff of the Parliament, headed by our clerk, Ms. Valerie Curtis, held a reception event, if you will, for former Speaker former clerk, Mrs. Heather Cook. She attended the Parliament along with certainly a member of her family, and she was greeted by the members of the staff who spoke of her contribution to the Parliament. She was presented with a bouquet and a lovely painting as a sign of the gratitude of the Parliament for her work. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but the Speaker did attend, and the pictures are online. If they are online yet, but we certainly have some very lovely pictures of Mrs. Cook, and of obvious delight that she exhibited in being hosted by the staff of the Parliament. So, on your behalf, I thank Ms. Curtis and her staff for having this event. And finally, although I do not believe this to be the last session of this Parliament for the Senate for 20, it's not the last for 2021. My understanding is that there has been a Christmas event, Christmas meal put on for us downstairs, so I invite all of you to attend. My understanding is that the staff have gone to some trouble to make the usually drab dining room appear festive. So it would be nice if you all could attend and show our appreciation to the whole question of fellowship at this time of year, and to show our appreciation to the members of the staff who have gone to some trouble to prepare this meal for us. Thank you, Minister.
Mr. President, it is not intention to continue doing any business in the Senate today, so I'm asking that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be announced.
Thank you very much, Senator Hill. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned.